The world ended during Leo's coffee break. He'd been staring at the spreadsheet on his monitor for 43 minutes, the numbers blurring into a gray haze of quarterly projections and marketing budgets. The office hummed with the familiar sounds of keyboards clicking, phones vibrating, and the distant murmur of a conference call. Leo rubbed his eyes, the fluorescent lights overhead casting a pale, sickly glow across his cubicle. Another Tuesday. Another 8 hours of meaningless data entry. Then the screaming started. It began as a collective gasp, a sharp intake of breath that swept through the open-plan office like a wave. Leo looked up from his screen just as the window to his left shattered. Not from an impact, but from the air itself seeming to fracture. Blue light spilled through the broken glass, geometric patterns dancing across the ceiling. A translucent screen materialized in front of his face, hovering at eye level. System integration initiated. The words glowed with an alien intensity. Below them, scrolling text appeared faster than Leo could read. Planet Earth designated as Trial World #7/413. Reality parameters rewritten. All life forms integrated into the universal system. Survival protocols activated. Leo stumbled back from his desk, chair rolling away behind him. Around him, his co-workers were doing the same, some crying, others shouting, a few frozen in place. The blue screens weren't just in front of him, they filled the air, dozens of them, each personalized. He saw Margaret from accounting staring at hers, her face pale. "What is this?" she whispered. "Some kind of hack." But it wasn't a hack. The proof came a moment later when the ceiling above the water cooler collapsed. Not from structural failure, from something materializing through it. A creature the size of a large dog, but with too many legs and a carapace that gleamed like obsidian, dropped onto the carpet. It hissed, mandibles clicking, and lunged at the nearest person. Chaos erupted. Leo didn't remember running. Instinct took over, the primal urge to survive that had been buried under years of spreadsheets and commute times. He burst out of the office into the hallway, joining a stream of panicked people heading for the stairs. The blue screen followed him, persistent, updating as he moved. Initializing personal status. Scanning biological parameters. Assigning rank based on baseline attributes. He reached the street just as the first car crashed. The sky had turned a bruised purple, streaked with ribbons of that same blue light. More creatures were appearing, some from tiers in the air, others crawling up from sewer grates. People were fighting, or trying to. A man in a business suit swung a briefcase at a floating jellyfish-like entity, only to be enveloped in glowing tendrils. He screamed, then went silent, dissolving into motes of light. Leo's screen flashed urgently. Rank assignment complete. Name, Leo Mercer. Age, 28. Designation, F rank reject. He stared at the words. F rank. Reject. Below it, his stats appeared in cruel, minimalist lines. Strength, 3. Agility, 4. Endurance, 2. Intelligence, 7. Wisdom, 5. Charisma, 4. Note, baseline human average is 10 per attribute. Subject falls below minimum viability thresholds. Marked for observation. A laugh bubbled up in his throat, hysterical, broken. Of course. Of course he'd be the weakest. The universe had always had a sense of humor about his mediocrity. In school, he'd been the kid picked last for teams. At work, he was the one passed over for promotions. Now, in the apocalypse, he was officially the most pathetic human alive. Look at this. The voice came from his right. Leo turned to see a group of survivors huddled in the doorway of a shattered storefront. They were neighbors he recognized vaguely, Tom from the third floor, who always played his music too loud, Sarah, the yoga instructor from across the hall, and a couple others whose names he didn't know. They all had blue screens floating near them, but theirs glowed with different colors. Tom's was a steady green. F rank, Tom sneered, pointing at Leo's screen. I didn't even know that was possible. I got D rank. Sarah's C. Sarah didn't look proud. She looked terrified, but she still managed a condescending glance at Leo's stats. Strength 3. My cat has higher strength. Leo said nothing. What was there to say? The numbers were right there, glowing for everyone to see. His failure quantified, digitized, displayed like a badge of shame. Initial quest assigned. Walk 100 meters. Objective, move from current location to a point 100 meters away. Reward, 10 EXP. Failure penalty, none. Note, quest designed for absolute beginners. Failure indicates critical lack of motor function. Even the system was mocking him. A quest a toddler could complete. A reward so pitiful it was almost insulting. Leo looked down the street. 100 meters. That was just to the intersection, where a overturned bus smoked quietly. He could see the distance marker hovering in his vision, a faint blue line leading to a glowing circle on the asphalt. Go on, reject, Tom taunted. Let's see you walk. The others chuckled, a nervous, brittle sound. They were scared too, Leo realized. Scared of the monsters, scared of the blue screens, scared of this new world. Mocking him was a way to feel better about themselves, to cling to the old hierarchies when everything else had crumbled. Leo took a step. Then another. His legs felt heavy, like they were made of lead. It wasn't just fear, it was something deeper. A weight in his bones. The system's integration, maybe. Or just his own pathetic body living up to its new designation. He reached 20 meters. The group of neighbors watched, their expressions a mix of pity and contempt. 50 meters. His breath came in ragged gasps. Sweat trickled down his temple. 70 meters. His vision blurred at the edges. The glowing circle was just ahead, maybe 10 steps away. Then his foot caught on a piece of rubble. It was a small thing, a chunk of concrete from a damaged building facade. In the old world, he would have stumbled, maybe cursed, but caught himself. Now, with strength 3 and endurance 2, his body betrayed him completely. His ankle twisted. Balance evaporated. He fell forward, hands scrabbling for purchase that wasn't there. His knees hit the asphalt first, then his palms. Pain shot up his arms. He tried to push himself up, but his muscles trembled, gave out. He collapsed fully, cheek pressed against the rough, warm street. The glowing circle was right there, just beyond his fingertips. 98 meters. Quest failed. Objective not completed. Error, subject unable to perform basic locomotion. Note, F rank status confirmed. Recommending reassignment to non-combat duties. Laughter echoed from the storefront. He couldn't even walk 100 meters. Tom shouted. What a joke. Leo closed his eyes. Shame burned through him, hotter than the pain in his knees. This was it. The culmination of his entire life, a failure so complete it was almost artistic. He'd die here, on the street, and the last thing anyone would remember about him was that he couldn't manage a simple walk. But then, something shifted. A warmth bloomed in his chest. Not physical warmth, something deeper, in the place where his consciousness met the system's interface. The blue screen in front of his face glitched. The quest failed message flickered, distorted, then dissolved into static. New text scrawled across the display, not in the system's clean font, but in jagged, handwritten glyphs that seemed to bleed light. Hidden trait detected. Trait, the Perpetual Underdog's Boon. Condition, activated upon quest failure, stat penalty, or negative system effect. Effect, converts intended punishment into multiplied reward. Processing failure of walk 100 meters. Original reward, 10 EXP. Original penalty, none. Conversion matrix engaged. Calculating. Leo stared, uncomprehending. The glyphs swirled, resolved into clear text. Reward conversion complete. Granted, 1 million EXP. For a second, nothing happened. Then the world exploded in light. It wasn't external light, it was inside him. A torrent of energy that flooded every cell, every nerve ending. His blue screen went wild, notifications cascading. Level up. Level up. Level up. The messages blurred together, too fast to count. His body arched off the street, back bowing as power surged through him. Bones cracked and reknitted. Muscles thickened. The scrapes on his palms healed over in an instant, skin smoothing. He felt strong. Not just normal strong. Something beyond. The notifications finally slowed. Current level, 50. EXP to next level, 12, 500/250, 000. Attribute points available, 245. Note, rapid leveling detected. Anomaly logged. Leo pushed himself to his feet. The movement was effortless. Where before he'd struggled to stand, now he rose like a spring uncoiling. He looked at his hands. They were the same hands, but he could feel the difference, a latent power humming just beneath the skin. He glanced at his status screen. The stats had changed. Strength, 78. Agility, 82. Endurance, 76. Intelligence, 7, unchanged. Wisdom, 5, unchanged. Charisma, 4, unchanged. Note, physical attributes boosted by level scaling. Mental attributes require manual allocation. Level 50. He'd gone from the weakest human to, what? He had no frame of reference. But the numbers were real. The strength in his limbs was real. From the storefront, the laughter had died. Tom and the others were staring at him, confusion on their faces. They hadn't seen the notifications, the system was personal. All they saw was Leo falling, then getting up with strange suddenness. What's wrong with him? Sarah whispered. Tom recovered first, his sneer returning. Probably just stunned himself. Come on, reject, you want another try? Maybe crawl this time. Leo looked at them. A part of him wanted to show them. To walk over and lift that overturned bus just to see their expressions. But a deeper instinct warned him. The system had called him an anomaly. It was watching. And these people, they'd seen him fail. They'd seen him weak. That was a mask he could wear. He let his shoulders slump. Made his breathing sound labored again. Stumbled slightly as he took a step back toward them, playing up the exhaustion. I'm sorry, he mumbled, keeping his eyes downcast. I don't know what happened. Tom snorted. You tripped. That's what happened. God, an F rank. We're better off leaving you for the monsters. But as Leo shuffled closer, he noticed something. Tom's green screen had a new notification. So did Sarah's. They were both staring at it, their mockery forgotten for a moment. Area alert, anomalous energy spike detected. Source, proximate. Investigating. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. They couldn't know it was him. Could they? He was 10 feet from the storefront when new figures emerged from a side alley. 3 of them, all men, moving with a confidence the others lacked. They wore scavenged gear, leather jackets reinforced with metal plates, pipes wielded like clubs. Their blue screens glowed a steady yellow. C ranks. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and a scar across his chin, looked at the group, then at Leo. His eyes narrowed at Leo's F-rank designation, still visible above his head. Well, the man said, his voice a low rumble. Look what we have here. An F-rank reject. I heard the rumors, but I didn't think they'd actually exist. He stepped closer. Leo forced himself to tremble, to shrink back. You know, the man continued, in the old world, we just ignore trash like you. But this new world has rules. Weakness attracts monsters. Puts the rest of us at risk. He raised his club. Not to strike, but to point. That failure of yours just now. Pathetic. I think you need a lesson in what happens to failures here. Behind him, his 2 companions grinned. Tom and the other neighbors edged away, suddenly very interested in the ground. Leo met the leader's eyes. Inside, the power of level 50 sang. He could break this man in half without trying. But the hidden trait whispered in his mind. Failure. Penalty. Conversion. He dropped his gaze again, playing the part. Please, he whispered. I didn't mean to. The leader laughed. Oh, this is going to be fun. And as they closed in, Leo allowed himself a small, hidden smile. Because for the first time in his life, failure wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The laughter echoed in Leo's ears like shards of glass. He remained on his knees in the rubble-strewn street, the dust from his earlier collapse still settling around him. 3 figures approached, their shadows stretching long in the afternoon sun that filtered through the broken skyscrapers of what had once been downtown. Look at this, a rough voice sneered. The F-rank wonder can't even walk 100 meters. Leo kept his head down, his mind racing. The sensation of power still thrummed through his veins, the sudden surge of energy when his hidden trait had activated, the dizzying rush of leveling up 50 times in an instant. But outwardly, he maintained the posture of defeat. His clothes were torn from the fall, his hands scraped raw against the asphalt. He could feel the eyes of other survivors watching from makeshift shelters, their gazes a mixture of pity and contempt. "Get up, Reject," the leader of the group commanded. Leo slowly pushed himself to his feet, making his movements deliberately shaky. The man before him was built like a linebacker, with thick arms crossed over a leather vest that bore a crude, C-rank insignia burned into the material. Two others flanked him, a wiry woman with a cruel smile and a lanky man who kept cracking his knuckles. "I'm sorry," Leo mumbled, keeping his voice weak. "I didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to what?" the C-rank thug interrupted. "Didn't mean to embarrass yourself in front of the whole settlement. Everyone saw your little performance. Quest, walk 100 meters. Status, failed." He spat on the ground near Leo's feet. "You're worse than useless. You're a stain on humanity." Leo felt a flash of anger but suppressed it immediately. "Play the part," he reminded himself. "The weaker they think you are, the better." "What's your name, Reject?" the woman asked, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Leo," he whispered. "Leo," the thug boomed, slapping his thigh. "Perfect. Listen, Leo. We've got a problem with F-ranks like you. You take up space. You consume resources. You're a liability in a world where every mouth to feed is a risk." He took a step closer, his shadow falling over Leo. "So we're going to do the settlement a favor. We're going to make sure you don't become anyone else's problem." Leo's heart hammered against his ribs, but not from fear. From anticipation. He'd seen the way these types operated in the 3 days since the system apocalypse had descended. They preyed on the weak, establishing their own twisted hierarchy in the chaos. "Please," Leo said, letting his voice tremble. "I'll do anything. Just don't hurt me." "Too late for that," the lanky man chuckled. "Boss, let me handle this. My crippling touch is perfect for this trash." The C-rank leader nodded. "Do it, Mark. Debuff his strength to 0. Let's see how he manages when he can't lift his own arms." Mark stepped forward, his hands glowing with a sickly green light. Leo recognized the skill from the system tutorials that had flashed in everyone's vision during the initial integration, a low-level ability that temporarily reduced a target strength stat by 50%. In Leo's case, with his base strength still showing as a pitiful 3, it would indeed render him nearly helpless. Or so they thought. "This won't hurt much," Mark lied, his grin widening. "Well, actually, it will. But you'll get used to being a vegetable." He placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. The green energy seeped into Leo's body, cold and invasive. A system notification appeared in Leo's vision, visible only to him. Debuff applied, crippling touch. Effect, strength reduced by 50% for 30 minutes. Status, Leo's strength, 31.5. For a moment, Leo felt the weakness they intended, a draining sensation, as if his muscles were turning to water. He let his knees buckle, dropping back to the ground with a convincing groan. "Pathetic," the woman sneered. He didn't even need the full debuff. But then, another notification flashed, this one in golden text that shimmered with an otherworldly light. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Stat penalty detected. Conversion protocol initiated. Strength debuff converted to permanent stat boost. Strength increased by 200%. Leo's strength, 1.54.5. Leo gasped, not from pain but from the sudden surge of power that followed. It was different from the EXP boost, more focused, more physical. He could feel the change in his body immediately. The weakness vanished, replaced by a coiled strength in his limbs that made him want to leap to his feet and test his new capabilities. His muscles didn't bulge visibly, the change was internal, a fundamental alteration of his physical potential. But he stayed down. He curled into a ball, making his breathing ragged. "See," the C-rank leader said, nudging Leo with his boot. "That's how you deal with trash. Now he's even more useless than before." Mark laughed. "Should we leave him here? Maybe the mutant rats will finish him off." The woman shrugged. "Waste of time. Come on, there are actual monsters to hunt. At least they give decent EXP." The trio turned away, their laughter fading as they walked down the broken street. Leo remained motionless for a full minute after they'd gone, listening to the sounds of the settlement around him, the murmur of voices, the clang of makeshift repairs, the distant screech of something that was no longer entirely animal. Slowly, he pushed himself up. His movements were steady now, controlled. He glanced at his status screen, pulling it up with a thought. Name, Leo. Rank, F, reject. Level, 50. Strength, 4.5. Agility, 52. Endurance, 51. Intelligence, 49. Perception, 50. Available stat points, 0. Hidden trait, Perpetual Underdog's Boon, active. 4.5 strength. It didn't sound like much, until he considered the context. Before the debuff, his strength had been 3. The average C rank had around 15 to 20 strength. B ranks ranged from 30 to 50. His 4.5 was still pitiful by those standards, but it was a 50% increase from his base in just moments. And more importantly, he understood the mechanism now. Every negative effect could become a positive one. He flexed his hand, watching the tendons move beneath his skin. The bullies had thought they were crippling him. Instead, they'd given him a permanent boost. A smile touched his lips, the first genuine smile since the world had ended. This changed everything. Hey, you okay? Leo quickly wiped the expression from his face, replacing it with the mask of weary defeat. A middle-aged woman approached, her face lined with concern. She wore simple scavenged clothes and carried a bucket of water. I saw what they did to you, she said softly. Those brutes. They think because the system gave them a higher rank, they own the place. I'm fine, Leo mumbled, looking at the ground. Just, weak. Here, she said, offering a strip of cloth. For your hands. Leo took it, noting the way his grip was firm and steady despite his act. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just survive. She hesitated. The system's assigning new quests. You should check yours. Maybe there's something you can actually do. She moved on, leaving Leo alone with his thoughts. He wrapped the cloth around his scraped palms, his mind working. The woman was right, he needed to check his quest log. But more importantly, he needed to understand the full potential of his trait. He found a relatively intact doorway to sit in, out of direct view. The building behind him had partially collapsed, but the entryway offered some shelter. Pulling up his quest interface, he saw the expected notification. New quest assigned. Quest, clean the latrines. Description, the settlement sanitation facilities require maintenance. Clean the designated latrine area to prevent disease spread. Objective, remove waste, scrub surfaces, dispose of materials properly. Difficulty, F, impossible to fail. Reward, 10 EXP, 1 clean rag. Penalty for failure, none. Note, this quest is designed for F-rank individuals who cannot contribute in other ways. Leo stared at the screen. Clean the latrines. The ultimate humiliation quest, assigned specifically to those the system deemed worthless. A task so simple that failure wasn't even considered possible. Remove waste, scrub surfaces, dispose of materials. How could anyone fail that? But that was exactly the point, he realized. The system had categorized him as incapable of meaningful contribution, so it gave him tasks that required no skill, no strength, no intelligence. Tasks that even the most incompetent person couldn't mess up. Unless they tried to. A plan began to form in his mind. If his trait converted failures into rewards, then he needed to fail. But failing a quest designed to be unfailable, that would require creativity. And it would need to look like an accident. He couldn't afford to draw suspicion, not when he'd just been publicly debuffed and humiliated. He stood, his body moving with a newfound grace that he carefully masked with a slight stumble. The latrine area was on the edge of the settlement, a makeshift setup of trenches and privacy screens that smelled even from a distance. A few other F-ranks were already there, moving slowly with buckets and brushes, their expressions blank with resignation. Leo approached the supply area where tools were kept. A rusted bucket, a brittle-looking scrub brush, a shovel with a cracked handle. Perfect. He picked up the shovel, testing its weight. With his new strength, it felt light as a feather. He could probably swing it with enough force to break concrete. But he needed to be careful. He needed to fail in a way that looked believable. You new here? Leo turned to see a gaunt man with hollow eyes. His system tag floated above his head, F-rank, Miller. Yeah, Leo said, keeping his voice soft. First time. Miller nodded toward the latrines. Don't think about it too much. Just do the work. It's better than being out there. He gestured vaguely toward the ruined city beyond the settlement's makeshift walls. At least here, the monsters usually don't come. Usually. Sometimes they do. But the C-ranks handle it. When they feel like it. Miller picked up a bucket. Just be glad you got an easy quest. Some F-ranks get fetch water from the contaminated river. That one doesn't end well. Leo watched Miller shuffle away, then turned his attention back to the shovel. The plan solidified. He would accidentally break the tool. Not in an obvious way, not by snapping it over his knee like some action hero. No, it needed to look like the tool failed during normal use. Like the weak F-rank was just too incompetent even for this simplest of tasks. He moved to the first trench, the smell assaulting his senses. He gagged convincingly, earning a few pitying looks from the other workers. Good. They were watching. They would be witnesses to his failure. Positioning himself near the edge, Leo raised the shovel. He calculated the angle, the force needed. Too much, and he'd send debris flying in an obviously superhuman display. Too little, and the shovel might not break at all. He needed just the right amount of pressure, enough to stress the cracked handle to its breaking point, but not enough to suggest unusual strength. He brought the shovel down toward a pile of waste, aiming for a rock he'd spotted half buried in the muck. At the last second, he adjusted his grip, putting torque on the weakened section of the handle. The crack was louder than he expected. The shovel head flew off, spinning through the air to land with a wet plop several feet away. The handle snapped cleanly in Leo's hands, leaving him holding two pieces of splintered wood. For a moment, there was silence. Then someone snorted. He broke the shovel, a voice said, disbelief coloring the words. How do you even do that? Another asked. Leo let the pieces fall from his hands, looking down at them with what he hoped was a convincing expression of shocked dismay. I didn't mean to. A system notification flashed in his vision, this one in red. Quest update, clean the latrines. Status, failed. Reason, destruction of settlement property, shovel. Penalty, none, F-rank immunity. And then, the golden text he'd been waiting for. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Quest failure detected. Conversion protocol initiated. Failure reward, 500,000 EXP. Additional reward, rare item, cleansing aura. Leo felt the surge of energy again, different from the stat boost but just as potent. His level ticked upward, 51, 52, 53, stopping at 55. The experience flooded into him, a river of power that made his senses sharpen. At the same time, a new skill slotted into his consciousness, cleansing aura. He could feel its potential, an area of affectability that would purify contaminants, heal minor ailments, and repel low-level undead. The irony wasn't lost on him, he'd failed to clean filth, and been rewarded with the power to cleanse on a magical level. Unbelievable, Miller muttered, shaking his head. You broke a shovel cleaning latrines. That's a new low, even for here. Leo hung his head, hiding the triumph in his eyes. I'm sorry. I'll try to fix it. Don't bother, a new voice said. A man in cleaner clothes approached, his tag reading, C-rank, settlement overseer. Just get out of here. We'll assign you something else tomorrow. Maybe sweep the dust or count the rocks. Something even you can't ruin. The overseer's disdain was palpable, but Leo didn't care. He'd done it. He'd failed on purpose and been rewarded. And more importantly, no one suspected a thing. To them, he was just the world's most incompetent survivor, a joke, a cautionary tale. As he walked away from the latrines, he pulled up his status screen again. Level 55. Strength still at 4.5, but his other stats had crept up slightly with the level gains. And he had a new skill. More importantly, he had confirmation, his trait worked consistently. Every failure, every penalty, every negative effect could be turned to his advantage. He found a secluded corner behind a collapsed wall and allowed himself a moment to examine the cleansing aura skill. With a thought, he activated it at its lowest setting. A soft golden light emanated from him, extending about a foot in all directions. The dirt on his clothes seemed to fade, the scrapes on his hands tingled as they began to close. He cut the skill off immediately, too risky to use openly. But the implications were staggering. If he could fail more quests, trigger more penalties, he could farm power while everyone thought he was just unlucky or incompetent. He could become stronger than the S ranks, all while hiding behind the facade of the universe's most pathetic underdog. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the ruined city. In the distance, Leo could hear the sounds of combat, the shouts of hunters, the roar of monsters, the ping of system notifications for those earning EXP the conventional way. They fought and struggled for every scrap of power. And he could get more by breaking a shovel. A new notification appeared, pulling him from his thoughts. System alert, new quest available at dawn. Preview, maintenance duty, repair broken fence. Difficulty, F, impossible to fail. Note, assignment based on consistent poor performance. Leo smiled in the gathering darkness. A broken fence. He wondered how many ways there were to fail at repairing something. And what rewards his trait would convert those failures into. The game had changed. They thought they were giving him impossible to fail quests to keep him out of the way. But to Leo, they were just opportunities waiting to be exploited. The weakest human alive was about to become the strongest, and no one would see it coming. He leaned back against the broken wall, watching the first stars appear in the sky. The system had branded him a reject. But with every failure, he was rejecting the system's definition of strength. And somewhere, in the depths of whatever passed for the system's consciousness, something began to glitch. The morning sun filtered through the cracked windows of the makeshift survivor camp, casting long shadows across the dirt-packed ground. Leo stood before the latrine area, a row of hastily dug pits surrounded by flimsy wooden partitions that did little to contain the stench. In his hands, he clutched the worn wooden handle of a rusty shovel, its metal head already loose from neglect. Around him, the camp buzzed with activity, survivors of various ranks moved with purpose, checking status screens, trading loot, or preparing for scavenging runs. None paid him more than a passing glance, their eyes sliding over his F-rank designation with practiced indifference. Leo took a deep breath, the foul air burning his nostrils. His heart hammered against his ribs, not from fear, but from anticipation. Last night, after the bullies had left him crumpled in the dirt, he'd spent hours poring over his status screen in the darkness of his assigned bunk. The numbers still glowed in his mind's eye, level 55, strength 4.5, and that cryptic trait, Perpetual Underdog's Boon, waiting like a coiled spring. The system's quest notification hovered in his peripheral vision, a persistent blue box that read. Quest, clean the latrines. Objective, ensure all waste pits are properly covered and sanitized. Difficulty, F rank, impossible to fail. Reward, 50 EXP, basic sanitation kit. Penalty for failure, none. Impossible to fail. The words were a challenge, a dare. Leo's lips twitched into a faint, private smile. He'd already planned his move. The shovel in his hands was his instrument of deliberate incompetence. Hey, reject. You gonna stand there all day or actually do something? The voice came from behind him, a burly man with a C-rank badge pinned to his leather vest. It was Mark, the same thug who debuffed him yesterday. His cronies flanked him, their expressions a mix of boredom and malice. Leo forced his shoulders to slump, his grip on the shovel to tremble visibly. I am trying, Leo stammered, pitching his voice high and weak. It's just, the shovel feels heavy. Mark snorted, crossing his arms. Heavy? It's a damn shovel, not a broadsword. But what do I expect from an F rank? Probably can't lift your own shadow. His friends chuckled, the sound grating against Leo's ears. He focused on the shovel, on the loose head. Just a little more pressure. Maybe I should help you, Mark sneered, stepping closer. Give you another taste of my crippling touch. Make sure you really can't handle it. Leo's breath hitched. Another debuff would be a gift, another stat boost hidden behind his facade. But no, he had to stick to the plan. The quest failure had to look accidental, not provoked. He shook his head, taking a step back. And no, I can do it. See? He hefted the shovel, aiming for the edge of the nearest pit. The motion was clumsy, exaggerated. He swung too hard, putting all his newfound strength into the blow, but he angled it wrong. The metal head struck not the dirt, but a protruding rock hidden in the soil. There was a sharp crack, a splintering of wood, and the shovel head flew off, arcing through the air to land with a dull thud in the latrine pit. Leo let go of the handle, stumbling backward as if recoiling from the force. He landed on his rear in the dirt, dust puffing around him. For a moment, there was silence. Then Mark burst out laughing, a harsh, barking sound that drew the attention of nearby survivors. You broke it. Mark wheezed, wiping a tear from his eye. You actually broke the damn shovel. How pathetic can you get? His friends joined in, their laughter echoing across the camp. Leo kept his head down, hiding his face behind a curtain of unkempt hair. Inside, though, his mind was racing. Come on, system. Log it. Log the failure. As if on cue, the blue screen flashed before his eyes. Quest failed, clean the latrines. Reason, tool destruction rendering objective impossible. Calculating. A heartbeat passed. Then another. Leo's palms grew clammy. What if it didn't work this time? What if the trait only activated under specific conditions? The doubt was a cold knot in his stomach. Then, the text shimmered, glitching for a split second before reforming. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Failure converted to reward. Reward, 500,000 EXP, rare item, cleansing aura. Leo's vision blurred as a surge of energy coursed through him. It was like drinking lightning, a crackling, invigorating rush that made his bones hum. His status screen updated in a flurry of notifications. Level up. 55-60. Level up. 60-65. Level up. 65-70. 5 levels. 5. He jumped from 55 to 70 in an instant, the EXP flooding his being. But more than that, a new icon glowed in his inventory, a pulsating orb of soft, golden light labeled, cleansing aura. He didn't dare examine it now, not with Mark still laughing overhead. Get up, you useless lump, Mark said, his mirth fading into disgust. Now you've got no shovel. Guess you fail by default. Typical F-rank trash. Leo pushed himself to his feet, brushing dirt from his threadbare pants. He kept his movements slow, uncoordinated. I'm sorry, he mumbled, not meeting Mark's eyes. I didn't mean to. Yeah. Just get out of my sight. The camp boss will assign you something else tomorrow. Maybe you can trip over your own feet and fail at breathing. Mark turned, waving a dismissive hand. Come on, boys. Let's find someone actually worth our time. They left, their laughter fading into the general noise of the camp. Leo stood alone by the latrine pit, the broken shovel handle still at his feet. He waited until he was sure no one was watching, then allowed himself a slow, deep breath. The rush of leveling up still tingled in his veins, a secret euphoria. He pulled up his status screen, scrolling through the updated stats. Name, Leo. Rank, F, reject. Level, 70. Strength, 4.5, hidden, 9.0 from Perpetual Underdog's Boon. Agility, 1.2. Endurance, 1.8. Intelligence, 2.0. Perception, 1.5. HP, 850/850. MP, 300/300. Traits, Perpetual Underdog's Boon, hidden. Skills, none. Items, cleansing aura, rare. His strength was effectively 9.0 now, higher than most B ranks, if the whispers around camp were true. And he had a rare item. He focused on, cleansing aura, and a description unfolded. Cleansing aura, creates a 10-meter radius field that purifies toxins, diseases, and negative status effects. Passive effect, immunity to low-level poisons. Active duration, 5 minutes. Cooldown, 1 hour. A survival tool. Perfect for maintaining his weak facade, he could pretend to be miraculously resistant to the camp's filth without revealing his true power. He dismissed the screen, his mind already turning. This proved it, every failure, every penalty, could be farmed. He just had to be careful, to make each failure look like an accident, a stroke of misfortune that befell the world's weakest human. As the day wore on, Leo kept to the shadows. He performed minor tasks, fetching water, sorting scraps, always with exaggerated clumsiness. He dropped a bucket, spilling precious water, and earned scowls from a D-rank overseer. No quest failure there, but the resentment was a small price to pay for his act. It was during the afternoon muster, when survivors gathered for assignment updates, that he felt eyes on him. Not the usual dismissive glances, but a steady, calculating gaze. Leo pretended to fumble with his ration pack, but his perception, though low, tingled with awareness. He risked a glance. Across the crowded square, leaning against a ruined wall, was a woman in sleek, dark armor. An S-rank badge gleamed on her chest plate, a silver emblem of a soaring hawk. She held a data pad, her fingers tapping rapidly. Her eyes, sharp and gray, were fixed on him. Not on his face, but on the space around him, as if she were reading something only she could see. A system scout, Leo realized with a jolt. Someone who monitored anomalies, tracked quest performances, identified assets, or liabilities. She watched him for a full minute, her expression unreadable. Then she made a note on her pad, turned, and melted into the crowd. Leo's blood ran cold. Had she noticed something? The repeated failures. The lack of actual degradation despite his bumbling. He forced himself to breathe evenly. No, he was overthinking. To her, he was just another F-rank reject, a waste of resources. Probably marking him for some dirty work. He was right, but not in the way he expected. As dusk settled, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, a new notification flashed before him, this one edged in ominous red. Forced quest invitation received. Quest, join the suicide raid on the Gloom dungeon. Objective, assist the S-rank guild Hawkseye in clearing the dungeon. Difficulty, S-rank, 99% failure rate. Reward, 10,000 EXP, guild favor, if survived. Penalty for failure, death. Acceptance mandatory, yes. Time limit, 12 hours. Leo's breath caught in his throat. A suicide raid. A 99% failure rate. They were sending him as a sacrifice, a disposable body to trigger traps, absorb hits, die quietly so the real fighters could advance. His hands trembled, but this time, it wasn't an act. This was danger, real and immediate. Death wasn't a stat penalty, it was permanent. Yet, beneath the fear, a spark ignited. A 99% failure rate, that meant the quest was designed to fail. And if he failed it, his trait would activate. What would it grant him? The EXP of an S-rank clear. Legendary loot. Immunity to death itself. The possibilities spun in his mind, dizzying and terrifying. He looked around the camp. Survivors were settling in for the night, huddling around fires, their faces drawn with exhaustion. None knew what he'd just been assigned. None cared. He was just the reject, the laughingstock. He closed his eyes, pulling up his status screen one more time. Level 70. Strength 9.0. Cleansing aura. And a trait that turned failure into triumph. He had 12 hours. 12 hours to prepare, to plan his failures within the dungeon, to ensure that when death came knocking, it would only make him stronger. He would enter the Gloom dungeon as the weakest link, the liability everyone expected. And he would fail, spectacularly and intentionally, until he emerged something else entirely. A slow smile touched his lips, hidden in the gathering dark. Let them think him a sacrifice. Let them think him doomed. He was the perpetual underdog, and his greatest strength was in falling short. The red notification pulsed, waiting. Leo took a deep breath, and in the quiet of his mind, he accepted the quest. The entrance to the Gloom dungeon yawned like a wound in the earth, a jagged fissure of obsidian stone that swallowed the one afternoon light. Leo stood at its edge, the forced quest notification still burning in his vision. Quest accepted, suicide raid on Gloom dungeon. Objective, survive the dungeon with Hawkseye Guild. Failure penalty, death. Reward, 100 EXP, if successful, ... He suppressed a smile. 100 EXP for a mission with a 99% mortality rate. The system's mockery was almost poetic. Around him, the Hawkseye Guild members moved with lethal grace. 10 warriors in polished steel armor, their ranks displayed proudly above their heads, all B2A rank, with levels hovering between 60 and 85. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man named Kale with a scar bisecting his brow, glared at Leo with undisguised contempt. The F-rank reject, Kale spat, his voice echoing in the cavernous entrance. Try not to trip over your own feet, boy. We're here to clear this dungeon, not babysit. Leo ducked his head, letting his shoulders slump in the perfect picture of cowering weakness. I'll do my best, sir. Internally, his mind was a whirlwind of calculation. The dungeon's description flickered in his system interface, Gloom Dungeon. Recommended level, 80+. Dungeon type, trap heavy, boss oriented. Known hazards, shadow tendrils, illusionary pits, corrosive mists. Boss, shadow behemoth, level 100. Perfect. Every trap was an opportunity. Kale barked orders, and the guild formed up, tanks in front, mages in the rear, with Leo shoved unceremoniously into the middle where he'd be protected. As they descended into the gloom, the air grew thick with the scent of damp stone and something darker, like ozone and decay. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the walls, casting eerie blue-green light that made shadows dance like living things. Leo's heart hammered not from fear, but anticipation. He kept his status screen minimized, but he could feel the weight of his hidden power, level 70, with stats that would make an S-rank blush, all concealed behind the pathetic F-rank emblem floating above his head. They hadn't gone 50 meters when the first trap activated. A guild scout, a lithe woman with daggers, stepped on a pressure plate. With a sound like tearing silk, the floor ahead dissolved into an illusionary pit. Not a true chasm, but a psychic trap that projected sheer terror into the mind. The scout screamed, frozen in place as phantom claws scrabbled at her psyche. Subquest triggered, overcome the illusionary pit. Success, mental resistance +5. Failure, fear debuff for 1 hour. Leo saw his chance. "I'll help," he cried, and before anyone could stop him, he lunged forward, not towards safety, but directly into the pit's projected area. He made sure to stumble, arms flailing dramatically. "You idiot!" Kale roared. Leo let the trap's psychic waves wash over him. He focused not on resistance, but on surrender. He remembered his mother's funeral, the day the system arrived, every humiliation he'd endured, and he let the fear consume him. He screamed, crumpling to his knees as the illusionary abyss swallowed him whole in his mind's eye. Subquest failed, overcome the illusionary pit. Fear debuff applied, -20% to all stats for 1 hour. Then, the hidden text flashed, visible only to him, Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Debuff conversion, fear debuff transformed into mental fortitude boost. Plus 200% mental resistance permanently. Additional reward, skill unlocked, Mind of Steel, passive, immunity to fear-based effects, . A warmth spread through Leo's skull, sharpening his thoughts until every shadow in the dungeon seemed to hold crystalline detail. He could feel the trap's psychic residue like static on his skin, and now it was harmless. But outwardly, he sobbed, curling into a ball on the cold stone. Kale dragged him up by the collar. "You nearly got yourself killed. One more stunt like that and I'll throw you to the shadows myself." Leo sniffled convincingly. Sorry. It was so scary." The guild medic, a stern woman with healing glyphs glowing on her hands, checked him over. "He's fine. Just shaken. The debuff will wear off." If only she knew. Leo's mental resistance stat had just tripled. He filed the information away, apparently, even subquest failures triggered his trait. This dungeon was a treasure trove. They pressed deeper. The corridor narrowed, walls closing in until they were single file. Here, the traps grew more physical. Shadow tendrils, semi-corporeal whips of darkness, lashed from crevices. A guild tank raised his shield, but one tendril snaked past his defense, wrapping around the leg of a mage. The man shrieked as corrosive shadow ate through his robes, sizzling against his skin. Subquest triggered, avoid shadow tendrils. Success, agility +10. Failure, corrosive wound, health drain over time, . Leo didn't hesitate. As the group dodged and weaved, he accidentally backed into a cluster of tendrils. He made it look like panic, a clumsy stagger born of terror. The shadows wrapped around his arm, and searing pain shot through him. Genuine pain, but he welcomed it. Subquest failed, avoid shadow tendrils. Corrosive wound applied, -5% HP per second for 30 seconds. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Damage conversion, corrosive wound transformed into health regeneration boost. Plus 300% HP regeneration permanently. Additional reward, skill unlocked, Shadow's Embrace, passive, take 50% less damage from shadow-based attacks. Leo gasped, clutching his arm as the wound visibly closed, new skin knitting over in seconds. The guild medic stared. "That shouldn't heal so fast." "Lucky, I guess," Leo stammered, letting his voice waver. Kale's eyes narrowed, but a new trap distracted him, a corridor filled with corrosive mist. The air turned acidic, eating at armor and flesh alike. Guild members activated barriers and potions, but Leo hung back, letting the mist kiss his skin. Another failure, another conversion, this time granting him plus 150% acid resistance and a temporary immunity bubble. With each mistake, Leo's hidden defenses swelled. His health pool, already massive from his levels, now regenerated at a monstrous rate. His resistances stacked until the dungeon's environmental hazards felt like mild irritants. But he played his part perfectly, stumbling, crying out at every shadow, earning scornful glances from the guild. Then they reached the first chamber. It was vast, a cathedral of darkness with a ceiling lost in gloom. In the center, an altar pulsed with malevolent energy. Kale held up a hand. Boss Arena. The behemoth isn't here yet, but the guardians are. As if on cue, shadows coalesced into humanoid forms, 10 level 75 shadow stalkers, their bodies flickering like bad reception. The guild sprang into action, spells and steel flashing. Leo was ordered to stay behind a pillar, but he edged closer, watching. The fight was brutal. A guild archer took a stalker's dagger through the throat, collapsing with a gurgle. Another warrior fell when 2 stalkers overwhelmed his guard. Leo counted the deaths, 3 down, 7 remaining guild members, plus him. Each death sent a thrill of guilt through him, quickly buried under cold logic. They'd brought him here to die. He owed them nothing. Subquest triggered, survived the Guardian assault. Success, team survives with minimal losses. Failure, death. Leo waited until a stalker broke through the line, heading straight for him, the weakest target. He pretended to fumble for a non-existent weapon, tripping over his own feet. The stalker's blade plunged toward his heart. At the last second, Leo stumbled sideways. The blade grazed his side, drawing blood but missing vitals. He cried out, falling hard. Subquest failed, survived the Guardian assault. Lethal damage avoided by chance. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Near-death experience conversion, plus 500% to vitality stat permanently. Additional reward, skill unlocked, second wind, active, once per day, survive a killing blow with 1 HP. Power flooded Leo's veins, a tidal wave of resilience that made his bones feel like tempered steel. He lay there, feigning injury, as Kale finished off the last stalker with a thunderous hammer blow. The guild leader stalked over, breathing heavily. Of the 10 members, only 4 remained besides him and Leo. The medic was gone, the scouts dead. Get up, reject, Kale snarled. We're not done. Leo pushed himself up, clutching his side. The wound was already closing, but he kept his hand pressed there for effect. I'm sorry. I tried. Save it. Kale turned to the altar. The behemoth comes when the blood soaks the stone. He gestured, and the remaining guild members dragged the corpses of their fallen comrades to the altar. Leo watched, stomach churning, as blood seeped into runic channels. The altar glowed crimson, and the chamber trembled. From the deepest shadows behind the altar, something stirred. A shape unfolded, first a claw the size of a man, then another, then a hulking form that blotted out the faint light. The shadow behemoth emerged, a creature of pure darkness given flesh. Level 100, with health bars that stretched across Leo's vision like a red river. Its eyes were pits of void, and its roar was the sound of crumbling mountains. Kale paled. Form up. This is what we came for. The remaining guild members attacked, spells splashed harmlessly against the behemoth's hide, swords sparked off shadowy scales. The creature swiped, and a warrior vanished in a spray of blood and armor fragments. Another fell to a stomp that cracked the stone floor. Leo backed away, as any F-rank would. But his mind raced. The behemoth's attention swung toward him, those void eyes locking onto his F-rank emblem. Of course, it would target the weakest first. Perfect. Kale saw it too. Distracted, reject. Buy us time. Leo didn't need to pretend to be terrified now, the behemoth's presence was a physical weight, crushing the air from his lungs. But beneath the fear, excitement thrummed. This was the ultimate failure opportunity. The raid was designed to wipe here. All he had to do was survive. The behemoth charged, a tidal wave of shadow. Leo turned to run, making sure to trip over a piece of rubble. He fell, sprawling as the creature loomed over him, its maw opening, a gateway to oblivion. Main quest update, avoid the shadow behemoth's initial attack. Success, temporary evasion boost. Failure, certain death. Leo closed his eyes, not in prayer, but in focus. He let the attack come. The behemoth's claw descended, and the world went dark. The shadow behemoth's claw descended like a falling mountain, dark as void stone and wreathed in crackling shadow energy. Time seemed to stretch. Leo could see every detail of the guild members scrambling backward, their faces pale with terror. The Hawkeye Guild, proud S-ranks who dragged him here as sacrificial fodder, were now abandoning him to die. Retreat! Fall back to the entrance, roared Garrett, their hulking tank, his shield already raised defensively as he backed away. The F-rank is dead anyway, don't waste your lives. Leo didn't move. He stood his ground in the cavernous dungeon chamber, the air thick with the smell of ozone and decay. Glue moss pulsed faintly on the walls, casting eerie green light over the scene. In his mind, he was calculating. The claw was aimed directly at his chest, a hit that, according to the system's damage projections flashing in his peripheral vision, would deal 5,000 points of shadow damage. His current HP, even with the plus 500% vitality boost from earlier failures, was only 1,200. On paper, this should vaporize him. Perfect. He let his body go slack, intentionally failing to activate the dodge skill he'd gained earlier. The system prompt flashed, dodge check failed. A normal person would feel despair. Leo felt a thrill. The claw connected. Impact. A deafening crunch of bone, or what should have been bone. Instead, Leo felt the shadow energy surge through him like ice water, and then, warmth. A golden glow enveloped his body as text scrolled across his vision. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Lethal damage converted, Shadow Claw Strike. Conversion, damage received permanent health boost. Plus 10,000 max HP added. Plus 200% shadow resistance acquired. Skill unlocked, Void Siphon, absorb shadow damage to restore HP. Leo gasped, not in pain, but in overwhelming sensation. His HP bar didn't drop, it expanded, swelling from 1,200 to 11,200 in an instant. The shadow energy that should have killed him instead knitted into his very cells, strengthening him. He staggered back a step for show, coughing dramatically as he dropped to one knee. From across the chamber, the guild members watched, wide-eyed. "He's still alive," whispered Lyra, their scout, her bow trembling in her hands. "Impossible," Garrett muttered. "That hit would have killed a B-rank." But they didn't stay to investigate. The shadow behemoth, a towering monstrosity of shifting darkness with 6 glowing red eyes, roared in frustration and turned its attention to the retreating guild. It lunged, but Garrett activated a barrier skill, buying them precious seconds to flee through the tunnel they'd entered from. Within moments, Leo was alone with the boss. Alone. Exactly as he'd planned. He rose slowly, brushing dungeon dust from his ragged F-rank tunic. The behemoth loomed over him, 20 feet tall, its form wavering like smoke given solid shape. It studied him, perhaps confused that its prey still stood. Leo allowed himself a small, hidden smile. "Okay, big guy," he murmured. "Let's dance." He didn't attack immediately. First, he needed to fail something else. The system had assigned him a raid quest, defeat the shadow behemoth, Gloom Dungeon Clear. Its status glowed red in his quest log, in progress. Leo focused and mentally selected Abandon Quest. A confirmation window popped up, warning, abandoning this quest will result in a 24-hour stat debuff and reputation loss with Hawkeye Guild. Confirm. He confirmed. Quest failed, defeat the shadow behemoth. Penalty applied, strength minus 50% for 24 hours, Hawkeye Guild reputation minus 1,000. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Penalty conversion, strength debuff permanent strength multiplier. Strength stat doubled. Current strength, 850, base 425 by 2. Reputation loss converted, plus 5,000 hidden fame, unlock stealth recognition from neutral factions. Power flooded his muscles. He clenched his fists, feeling strength that could crush stone. His strength stat now rivaled an A-rank brawler's, all from failing a quest he was about to complete anyway. The system really was his best farm. The behemoth, sensing his sudden surge, attacked again. This time, it unleashed a wave of shadow spikes from the ground. Leo didn't avoid them. He let 3 spikes impale his legs, shallow wounds, thanks to his new HP pool. More notifications. Shadow spike damage received, 800 HP. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Damage conversion, plus 400 agility, plus 5% critical chance. He was becoming a monster through sheer failure. But he couldn't let it show, not yet. He cried out in feigned pain, stumbling backward. "Help! Someone, He yelled toward the empty tunnel, knowing no one would come. The behemoth advanced, confident. It swiped with its other claw. Leo pretended to fumble his block, taking the hit on his shoulder. Another conversion, plus 300 defense, plus 15% damage reflection. He was ready. Time to end this. Leo reached for the ordinary iron dagger he'd been given, a mockery of a weapon for an F rank. But with his hidden strength, it might as well have been a legendary blade. He focused, recalling the combat basics he'd observed from the guild earlier. The behemoth's weak point, a pulsating shadow core in its chest, visible only when it roared. He waited. The beast reared back, preparing a breath attack of concentrated gloom. Its chest exposed the core, a dark jewel swirling with energy. Leo moved. He didn't use any fancy skills. Just raw, amplified strength. He sprinted forward, dagger held reverse grip. The behemoth's breath erupted, a cone of darkness that melted stone. Leo ran straight into it, failing to evade. Shadow breath damage, 3000 HP. Conversion, plus 1500 intelligence, skill unlocked, gloom walk, move silently through shadows. He emerged from the breath attack, his clothes singed but his body unharmed thanks to his massive HP and new resistances. Before the behemoth could react, he leaped. His enhanced strength propelled him 15 feet into the air, impossible for an F rank. He drove the dagger into the shadow core. Critical hit. The iron dagger shouldn't have pierced it. But with Leo's stats, it did. The core shattered with a sound like breaking glass. The behemoth froze, its form unraveling into tendrils of darkness. A final roar echoed, then silence. Shadow behemoth defeated. Experience calculated. Error detected. Quest status, failed. Adjusting rewards. Perpetual Underdog's Boon override, converting failure to S-rank clear rewards. Plus 5,000,000 EXP gained. Level up. 5268. Title acquired, Behemoth Slayer, plus 10% damage versus large monsters. Loot generated, Legendary Sword, Eclipse's Edge, Bound, Epic Chestplate, Shadowweave Mantle, 5,000 gold coins, Shadow Essence X10. Leo landed lightly as the behemoth's corpse dissolved into motes of dark light. Before him, items materialized, a sleek black sword with a blade that seemed to drink the light, a chestplate of woven shadow fabric, a pouch of gold, and glowing purple essences. He quickly stored everything in his inventory, except the sword. He held Eclipse's Edge, it felt alive in his hand, humming with power. But he couldn't keep it equipped. Too conspicuous. He swapped it for his iron dagger just as footsteps echoed from the tunnel. The surviving guild members, Garrett, Lyra, and 2 others, returned cautiously, weapons drawn. They froze at the scene. Leo, standing alone in the empty chamber, the last remnants of shadow drifting away. No behemoth. Just an F-rank reject, looking battered but alive. What happened? Lyra stammered, lowering her bow. Garrett's eyes narrowed. Where's the boss? Leo put on his best bewildered expression. He let his shoulders slump, injecting a tremor into his voice. I don't know. It just disappeared. There was a bright light, and then it was gone. Disappeared? Garrett growled. Bullshit. Behemoths don't disappear. Lyra approached, scanning the ground. No corpse. No loot. But the dungeon's clear, the exit is opening. She pointed to a previously sealed archway now glowing with light. Systems registering completion. Garrett glared at Leo. Did you do something? Me? Leo laughed weakly, a perfect imitation of helplessness. I barely survived. I think the system glitched. One moment it was about to kill me, the next, poof. Maybe it was a bug. He emphasized bug, playing into the growing rumors of system instabilities. The guild members exchanged uncertain looks. They'd all seen glitches lately, quests not tracking, stats flickering. It was plausible. Garrett snorted. A glitch that kills a level 100 boss. Lucky bastard. He sheathed his sword, disappointment clear. No loot, then. Just wasted time and dead comrades. Lyra helped Leo up, her expression softer. You're lucky to be alive. Come on, let's get out of here. As they walked toward the exit, Leo kept his head down, but his mind raced. He'd soloed a boss meant for a full S-rank party. His stats were now bloated beyond reason, level 68 with the hidden power of a triple S. And he had legendary gear in his inventory. But the facade held, they saw only a lucky fool. At the dungeon exit, daylight streamed in. The guild members stepped through, grumbling about the failed raid. Leo lingered for a moment, looking back at the gloom. A flicker in his vision, a system message, but corrupted, text scrambling. Anomaly, detected in Gloom Dungeon. Scanning, error. Entity Leo, status inconsistent. Recommend, investigation. It vanished. Leo's heart skipped a beat. The system was noticing. But for now, he was safe. He stepped into the light, where Garrett was already spinning the tale to other survivors gathered outside. The F-rank survived a behemoth because of a system bug. Can you believe it? Laughter and disbelief followed. Leo smiled inwardly. Let them laugh. Every chuckle was another layer to his disguise. He adjusted his tunic, feeling the hidden strength in his limbs, and prepared for the next failure. The morning after the shadow behemoth's fall dawned with a sickly orange glow, the sky still scarred by the system's integration. Leo stood at the edge of the Gloom Dungeon's entrance, the legendary sword, Shadow's Bane, hidden beneath a tattered cloak he'd scavenged from a fallen guild member. The blade hummed with latent power against his thigh, a constant reminder of the lie he was living. Around him, the survivor camp buzzed with renewed activity. Makeshift tents dotted the ruins of what was once a city park, and the air smelled of smoke and unwashed bodies. People glanced his way as he walked, some with awe, most with disbelief. The story had spread overnight. The F-rank reject, Leo, had somehow survived a suicide raid and witnessed the behemoth's disappearance due to a system glitch. Hey, it's the lucky fool, a voice called from a group huddled around a flickering holographic fire. Leo recognized the speaker, Mara, a D-rank healer who'd patched up minor scrapes for him weeks ago. Her tone held a strange mix of mockery and curiosity. Heard you got the behemoth to vanish with a sneeze. Leo forced a clumsy stumble, tripping over a loose stone. The system pinged immediately, minor trip detected. No quest associated. He caught himself, letting out an exaggerated sigh. Just, lucky, I guess, he mumbled, keeping his eyes downcast. Inside, his mind raced. His status screen, invisible to others, glowed with impossible numbers, level 68, strength 450, boosted from the behemoth's failed raid, health 1200/1200. The Perpetual Underdog's Boon had left a subtle, golden border around the trait description, as if the system itself was struggling to categorize it. Luck doesn't clear S-rank dungeons, a deeper voice cut through the chatter. Leo turned to see Kalen, the S-rank guild leader, approaching with 2 armored lieutenants. Kalen was a mountain of a man, his face scarred from countless battles, and his eyes, sharp and analytical, bore into Leo. He wore polished plate armor that reflected the dull light, and a great sword rested on his back. My scouts reported the behemoth's corpse was looted. Legendary tier items don't just disappear. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs, but he kept his posture slouched. I didn't see anything, sir. Just blue screens and errors. He gestured vaguely, his hands trembling slightly, a performance honed over weeks of pretending. The system said, quest failed, then everything went blurry. Kalen's gaze didn't waver. I've accessed the raid logs. Your record is anomalous. He pulled up a translucent system screen, visible only to him, and scrolled through lines of text. Failed quest, walk 100 meters. Failed quest, clean latrines. Failed quest, survive Gloom Dungeon raid. Each with corrupted error codes. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. What are you hiding, reject? The camp fell silent, survivors eavesdropping openly. Leo felt sweat bead on his forehead. This was the moment, the suspicion he'd anticipated. He let his eyes widen with what he hoped passed for innocent confusion. Hiding? I'm just trying to survive. The system gives me these, impossible tasks. He gestured to a nearby quest board, where new assignments flickered. Look, it just assigned me another one. A blue screen materialized in front of Leo, visible to all. New quest, defeat a level 1 slime. Objective, locate and defeat 1 level 1 slime in the designated training grounds. Reward, 10 EXP, 1 copper coin. Failure penalty, none, quest designed for absolute beginners. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. A slime? Mara snorted. Even a child could do that. But Leo's mind was already working. A level 1 slime, the most basic monster in the system's bestiary. Designed to be unfailable. Perfect. He looked at Kalen, forcing a hesitant smile. See? This is what I get. Maybe I should try it. Prove I'm not a total loss. Kalen's eyes narrowed. Do it. I'll observe. I want to see this luck in action. He motioned to his lieutenants, who took positions to flank Leo. The training grounds are east of camp. We'll follow. As they walked through the camp, whispers trailed them like ghosts. That's the one who soloed the behemoth. No, he just got lucky, system glitch. Kalen's onto him. Leo kept his head down, but internally, he was strategizing. The slime quest was a gift. If he could fail it, somehow make a level 1 slime defeat him, his trait might trigger something unprecedented. What would the system convert a failure of such a trivial task into? The risk was exposure, but the potential reward. The training grounds were a sad patch of dirt and rubble, cordoned off by shimmering system barriers. A few newbies, E-ranks mostly, practiced against dummy targets. In the center, a single level 1 slime oozed lazily. It was a small, gelatinous blob, pale green and harmless, with HP 10/10, floating above it. Go on, reject, Kalen said, crossing his arms. Show us how you handle a real challenge. Leo stepped forward, the eyes of the camp burning into his back. He could feel Kalen's scrutiny like a physical weight. He approached the slime, which pulsed gently, unaware of its role in his gambit. The system prompted, engage with target. Y/N. He selected Y, and a combat interface overlay his vision. Basic options, attack, defend, flee. He ignored them. Instead, he knelt down, making a show of fumbling with his cloak. Okay, little guy, he whispered, loud enough for others to hear. Let's get this over with. In his mind, he formulated the plan, do nothing. Let the slime attack him. A level 1 slime's damage was negligible, maybe 1 point per hit. But if he intentionally failed to defend, if he let it defeat him by not fighting back, the system might register it as a quest failure. And with no failure penalty, what would his trait do? The slime wobbled forward, extending a pseudopod. Leo didn't move. He let it tap his leg, a soft, wet touch. Slime attacks. Damage, 1, your HP, 1199/1200. A pathetic notification. He forced a gasp, stumbling back dramatically. Ow. It's stronger than I thought. More laughter from the onlookers. Kalen's expression remained unreadable. Leo continued the charade. He pretended to swing a fist, intentionally missing by a wide margin. The slime oozed closer, tapping him again. Damage, 1, HP, 1198/1200. He let out a yelp, falling to one knee. I can't hit it. It's too fast. It was absurd, and he knew it. But he was banking on the system's literal interpretation. After a minute of this pantomime, the slime tapping him repeatedly, Leo failing to land a single blow, he triggered the quest submission. He focused mentally, submit quest result, failure. The system paused. For a long second, nothing happened. Then, blue screens erupted around him, flickering violently. Quest failed, defeat a level 1 slime. Error, anomalous failure detected. No logical cause for failure. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Reward conversion, calculating. Leo held his breath. The screens glitched, pixels scattering like confetti. Then, new text scrolled rapidly. Conversion complete, failure penalty, none, converted to reward. EXP gained, 5 million, equivalent to defeating Ancient Dragon, level 500. Level up. Level 68, level 89. New skill unlocked, Slime Mimicry, rank S. Skill description, transform into a level 1 slime form, gaining camouflage and minor regeneration. Duration, 1 hour. Cooldown, 6 hours. Additional reward, stat overflow. All base stats increased by 15%. Power surged through Leo, a tidal wave of energy that made his bones hum. He clenched his fists, fighting to keep his expression one of bewildered defeat. His health pool skyrocketed, his strength multiplied silently. The legendary sword beneath his cloak seemed to grow warmer, as if resonating with his new power. The physical changes were subtle but profound. His muscles tightened with latent strength, his senses sharpened, he could hear the rustle of fabric from Kalen's armor, smell the ozone of the system barriers. But outwardly, he remained the same stumbling F-rank. The system's screens flickered again, this time with corrupted messages visible only to him: anomaly, escalating, trait interference. 87%, recommend, investigation. Then they vanished. Leo looked up, feigning confusion. The slime had retreated, now, HP, 10 out of 10, and indifferent. The crowd was silent, staring. Kalen stepped forward, his eyes scanning Leo up and down. What happened? He demanded. I failed, Leo said, letting his shoulders slump. The slime was too much. I guess I'm just not cut out for this. He gestured weakly at the empty air where the system screens had been. More errors. Kalen's jaw tightened. He pulled up his own system interface, typing rapidly. I'm running a deep scan on your activity logs. All I'm getting is gibberish, corrupted data strings. He looked at Leo, suspicion hardening into something colder. You're either the unluckiest man alive, or you're playing a game. Leo met his gaze, keeping his own wide and innocent. I wish I knew, sir. I just want to help. For a moment, Kalen seemed to waver. Then he shook his head. We'll see. The camp needs supplies, there's a quest to gather herbs in the toxic marshes. It's a D-rank task, but with your luck, maybe you'll survive. He turned to leave, then paused. And Leo? Don't disappear. I'll be watching. As Kalen and his lieutenants walked away, the crowd slowly dispersed, murmurs rising again. Did you see those system glitches? He really can't beat a slime. Maybe he's cursed. Alone, Leo let out a slow breath. He pulled up his status screen privately. Level 89. Strength now over 500. Slime mimicry, a perfect tool for evasion. The gambit had worked beyond his wildest hopes. But the corrupted messages, the system was breaking down around him. And Kalen's suspicion was a ticking bomb. He looked east, toward the toxic marshes. Another quest, another opportunity to fail and grow stronger. But this time, he had a new tool. He focused, activating slime mimicry. His body shimmered, collapsing inward with a soft squelch. In seconds, he was a small, green slime, identical to the one he'd just failed against. He oozed a few feet, testing the form. It felt freeing. No one would suspect a slime of being a level 89 anomaly. But as he moved, a new blue screen flickered at the edge of his perception, this one pulsing with urgency: system alert, anomaly threshold breached. Auditor dispatch imminent. Leo froze in his slime form. Auditor? The word sent a chill through his gelatinous body. He'd been careful, but the system was catching on. He needed to move, to farm more power, to understand his trait's limits before whatever an auditor was arrived. He let the mimicry drop, reforming into his human shape behind a pile of rubble. The camp was busy, no one noticing his brief transformation. He walked toward the quest board, his mind racing. The Toxic Marshes quest, another chance to fail, to push the system further. But now, with an auditor coming, the stakes were higher. He accepted the quest, the system confirming with a chime. Quest accepted, gather 10 toxic blossoms. Reward, 100 EXP, failure penalty, minor poisoning. Leo smiled faintly. Minor poisoning. That could be converted. He turned, planning his route. But as he did, he caught a glimpse of a figure in a dark hood, standing at the edge of the camp, watching him. The figure was still, almost blending with the shadows, and Leo couldn't make out any features. But the gaze felt heavy, analytical. He quickly looked away, heart pounding. Was that the auditor? Or something else? He hurried toward the marshes, the legendary sword hidden, his slime mimicry ready. The facade of the lucky fool was cracking, and beneath it, power simmered, waiting for the next failure. The toxic marshes stretched before Leo like a canvas of decay. Murky green water pooled between twisted, leafless trees whose bark peeled away in sickly strips. A perpetual mist hung low to the ground, carrying the scent of rot and something metallic, the system's approximation of a low-level hazard zone. Leo trudged through the muck, his boots sinking with each step. He'd been sent here on Kalen's D-rank quest, gather 10 blightroot herbs. A simple task for any competent survivor, but Leo had no intention of completing it. His mind replayed the whispers from the survivor camp. Lucky fool, they'd called him after the Gloom dungeon. Got carried by a glitch. He'd smiled sheepishly, nodding along, while inside, his perpetual underdog's Boon hummed with potential. This slime quest was his next experiment. A level 1 slime, the weakest monster in the system's bestiary. To fail against it would be the ultimate humiliation. Perfect. He found the slime in a small clearing where the mist thinned. It was a pathetic thing, no larger than a melon, wobbling on a bed of moss. Its gelatinous body shimmered with a pale blue hue, and a single, dopey eye blinked slowly from its center. The system prompt hovered above it. Quest, defeat level 1 slime. Reward, 10 EXP, 1 copper coin. Failure penalty, none. Leo smirked. None. The system didn't even consider failure an option here. But he would make it one. He approached slowly, making no aggressive moves. The slime noticed him, its eye widening slightly. It let out a soft, blorp sound and began to inch forward, leaving a trail of sticky residue. Leo dropped to one knee, feigning exhaustion. He let his guard down completely, his arms hanging limp at his sides. The slime hesitated, as if confused by this non-threatening giant. Then, with a sudden burst of enthusiasm, it launched itself at his chest. Leo didn't flinch. The impact was laughably weak, a damp, cool pressure, like being hit with a wet sponge. The slime clung to him, its body flattening against his tunic. It tried to attack by secreting a mild acid, but it barely tingled against his skin. Leo closed his eyes and focused. He willed himself to fail. He didn't raise a hand to swat it away. He didn't activate any skills. He just stood there, letting the slime have its moment. Seconds ticked by. The slime, encouraged, wobbled up to his shoulder and gave a triumphant little jiggle. Then, the system screen flashed before Leo's eyes. Quest failed. Reason, user took fatal damage from level 1 slime. Calculating penalty. Leo held his breath. This was it. The moment where his hidden trait would twist the system's logic into a pretzel. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Penalty conversion, failure to defeat level 1 slime. Reward, 5 million EXP, equivalent to defeating level 500 Ancient Dragon. Additional reward, unique skill unlocked, Slime Mimicry, S rank. A surge of energy ripped through Leo. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming, a torrent of power that made his bones vibrate. Blue light erupted from his body, so bright it pierced the marsh's gloom. His status screen updated in a blur. Level up. 75, 76, 77. The numbers climbed rapidly, settling at level 89. His stats, hidden from public view, blossomed. Strength, agility, vitality, all jumped to levels that would make an A-rank warrior weep. But more than that, a new skill slotted into his consciousness, slime mimicry. He could feel its potential, the ability to transform his body into a slime's gelatinous form, perfect for infiltration, evasion, and hiding his absurd power. He grinned, but the grin froze as the system began to glitch. Blue screens flickered around him like faulty neon signs. Error messages popped up, overlapping each other. Error, reward calculation mismatch. Warning, anomaly detected in quest number 7342. System integrity, 99.8%. 99.7%. The air crackled with static. The mist seemed to pixelate at the edges. The slime, still clinging to Leo, let out a confused bloop, and slid off, retreating into the shadows as if scared by the display. Leo's heart hammered. This was new. The glitches had been subtle before, corrupted logs, error messages only he could see. But this was visible, audible. Anyone nearby would notice. He quickly dismissed the screens, but they left afterimages in his vision. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. The power thrummed in his veins, a heady cocktail of strength and secrecy. He focused on the slime mimicry skill, testing it mentally. With a thought, his hand shimmered, turning translucent and blue, fingers merging into a gelatinous blob. He willed it back to normal. Perfect. This could be his ultimate disguise. But his triumph was cut short by a flicker of movement at the edge of the clearing. Leo's senses, heightened by his new levels, snapped to attention. There, between two gnarled trees, stood a figure. Hooded, cloaked in shadows that seemed deeper than the marsh's natural gloom. They were tall, lean, and utterly still. A notebook was in their hands, and a stylus moved swiftly across its surface. Leo's blood ran cold. He hadn't heard anyone approach. The figure's presence was like a void, no sound, no system identifier above their head. Nothing. Who's there? Leo called out, his voice carefully pitched to sound nervous, weak. The facade was instinctual now. The figure didn't respond. They simply continued writing, their head tilted slightly as if studying him. Then, they lifted a hand, and a tiny, intricate blue screen, different from the system's usual interface, floated before them. It displayed lines of scrolling code, too fast for Leo to read, but he caught flashes: anomaly, trait mismatch, audit required. Auditor. The word from the corrupted alerts. This was no ordinary survivor. Leo took a step back, his mind racing. Should he run? Fight? But fighting would reveal his power. Running might draw more suspicion. He opted for confusion. Hey, are you lost? This area's dangerous for low levels. He injected a tremor into his voice. The figure finally moved. They lowered the notebook, tucking it into their cloak. The hood shifted, and for a moment, Leo thought he saw a glimpse of pale, androgynous features and eyes that glowed with a soft, internal light. Then, without a word, they turned and melted into the mist, disappearing as silently as they'd arrived. Leo stood frozen for a full minute, listening. Only the drip of marsh water and the distant croak of some unseen creature broke the silence. But the encounter left a chill that had nothing to do with the damp air. He pulled up his quest log. The slime quest was marked failed, but the herb-gathering quest from Kalen still loomed. He had 10 blightroot herbs to fail to collect. But now, his mind was elsewhere. Who was that hooded figure? An NPC? A system entity? And why were they watching him? He decided to proceed with caution. Using his new slime mimicry skill, he transformed his entire body into a slime, a perfect replica of the one he'd just lost to. It was an eerie sensation. His consciousness remained, but his form was fluid, malleable. He could ooze through tight spaces, blend into puddles, and his system identifier changed to level 1 slime, for anyone scanning him. In this form, he moved through the marshes, searching for blightroot. He found a patch growing near a poison stream. Instead of picking them, he accidentally oozed over them, dissolving the herbs with his acidic body. The system dinged. Quest failed, gather 10 blightroot herbs. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated, reward, plus 50 to poison resistance, item, toxin-proof gloves. Another small boost. But Leo barely registered it. His slime eye, a single, panoramic lens, scanned the surroundings constantly. He saw no sign of the hooded figure, but the memory of their silent observation haunted him. As he shifted back to human form near the edge of the marshes, the system glitched again. A blue screen flickered persistently in the corner of his vision. Alert, Auditor Dispatch logged. Subject, Leo, F-rank reject. Status, under observation. Recommendation, further analysis required. He swiped it away, but it left a knot of anxiety in his gut. The system was catching on. And now, it had eyes. He returned to the survivor camp as evening fell. The settlement was a ragged collection of tents and repurposed buildings, lit by flickering system-generated torches. People nodded at him, some with pity, others with disdain. Back from the slime hunt, reject, a burly C-rank guard sneered. Leo ducked his head. It got away. Laughter followed him. He leaned into it, letting the humiliation wash over him. Each mocking word was fuel. But as he reached his assigned bunk, a cramped corner of a storage tent, he paused. There, on his makeshift bed, was a single, pristine white feather. It hadn't been there when he left. He picked it up. It was cool to the touch, and as he held it, a tiny message appeared. Item, Auditor's Token. Description, a marker. You have been noted. Leo's fingers tightened around the feather. The hooded figure had been here. In the camp. Watching him even among the crowds. He sat on his bed, the feather in his palm. The system's glitches, the auditor, the token, it was all escalating. His trait was a cheat code, but it was drawing attention from powers he didn't understand. For the first time, a flicker of fear cut through his calculated plans. How long could he keep pretending to be the universe's most pathetic underdog when the universe itself was starting to stare back? Outside, the camp's noises faded into the night. But in the shadows between tents, Leo could have sworn he saw a hooded silhouette, just for a second, before it vanished into the dark. The survivor camp's makeshift barracks were never truly quiet. Even in the dead of night, the low hum of system notifications from distant patrols, the occasional groan of a restless sleeper, or the scuttle of mutated vermin in the walls provided a constant, uneasy soundtrack to post-apocalyptic life. But for Leo, lying rigid on his thin cot, the silence in his own mind was deafening. His eyes were fixed on the ceiling, a patchwork of salvaged tin and plastic sheeting that did little to keep out the chill. Beside his pillow, glinting in the faint moonlight filtering through a crack, was the feather. It was no ordinary feather. About 6 inches long, it shimmered with an unnatural, metallic blue sheen, as if dipped in liquid electricity. When he'd first found it upon returning from his battle with the slime, he'd almost mistaken it for a system drop. But no notification had appeared. Instead, a cold dread had settled in his gut. He'd picked it up cautiously. It was weightless, cool to the touch, and bore no physical markings, yet he felt a faint, staticky buzz against his skin, a sensation eerily similar to the glitches that now seemed to follow him. An auditor's token, he'd guessed immediately. Someone, or something, was watching. And they'd left a calling card. For 2 days, Leo had played his part perfectly. He'd shuffled through camp with his head down, accepted the pitying looks and occasional sneers, and even volunteered for the most menial tasks, clearing rubble, mending fences, all while keeping his status screen meticulously hidden. Internally, he was a storm of calculation. Level 89. Strength, agility, vitality, all stats bloated far beyond any S-rank's wildest dreams, yet compressed behind his F-rank facade like a coiled spring. The slime mimicry skill sat in his mental interface, a tantalizing new tool. He'd tested it briefly in private, his body dissolving into a translucent, gelatinous form that could ooze through cracks and absorb minor impacts. Perfect for evasion, perfect for hiding. But he hadn't dared use it openly. Not yet. The system glitches had become more frequent. Sometimes, when he walked past a notification board, the blue screens would flicker, displaying fragmented error codes like, anomaly detected, reward calculation overflow, or, trait interference, Perpetual Underdog's Boon, unregistered. They'd vanish as quickly as they appeared, leaving bystanders scratching their heads and muttering about system lag. Leo knew better. The system was straining under his exploits. And now, it seemed, it had sent a troubleshooter. On the third morning, the confrontation came. Leo was in the camp central square, pretending to struggle with hauling a crate of ration packets, a trivial task even for a genuine F-rank. He'd intentionally fumbled it, letting the crate thud to the dusty ground, earning a few chuckles from passing C-rank guards. As he bent to pick it up, a shadow fell over him. Leo, isn't it? The voice was calm, feminine, and utterly devoid of emotion. It cut through the ambient noise like a scalpel. Leo straightened slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. Before him stood a woman clad in a hooded robe of deep gray, the fabric seeming to drink the light around it. Her face was partially obscured by the hood, but he could see sharp, pale features and eyes that glowed with a soft, cerulean light, the same hue as system interfaces. She held no visible weapon, but her posture was rigid, authoritative. In her hand, she twirled another of those metallic feathers absently. "Yeah," Leo said, forcing his voice into a nervous warble. He wiped his hands on his worn trousers. "Can I help you?" "I am Auditor Kayla," she stated, her gaze sweeping over him. It felt less like being looked at and more like being scanned. Entity designation, System Compliance Division, Anomaly Resolution Unit. You have been flagged for repeated irregularities in quest completion and stat progression. Leo blinked, putting on his best confused expression. Irregularities? I don't understand. I just fail a lot. Everyone knows that. He gestured vaguely at the crate. See? A faint, humorless smile touched Kayla's lips. Indeed. Your failure rate is statistically improbable. Walk 100 meters. Clean latrines. Survive a gloom dungeon raid. Defeat a level 1 slime. She listed each with clinical precision. Each should have been trivial or fatal. Yet you persist. More curiously, your failure logs are accompanied by massive energy spikes and reward allocations that defy standard protocols. Leo's mind raced. She had access to his logs, or at least the corrupted versions. He shrugged, letting his shoulders slump. I guess I'm just lucky. The system glitches sometimes. Maybe it feels sorry for me. The system does not feel, Kayla replied coldly. It calculates. And your calculations are wrong. She took a step closer, and Leo caught a whiff of ozone, like the air after a lightning strike. I have reviewed the data. Your trait, the Perpetual Underdog's Boon, is not registered in any known database. It appears to be a parasitic subroutine, hijacking failure states to generate unauthorized rewards. In simpler terms, you are exploiting a bug. The word hung in the air. Bug. It made his power sound cheap, illicit. Leo felt a flash of anger, but he smothered it. Play dumb. Always play dumb. A bug? I don't know anything about that. The system gave me the trait when everything started. It's just, what I have. Unlikely, Kayla said. Her glowing eyes narrowed. Standard integration assigns traits based on pre-apocalyptic potential. Your records show no exceptional qualities. This trait is an aberration. It is causing cascading errors in local system functions. If left unchecked, it could destabilize broader protocols. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Around them, camp life went on, people bartering, children playing with shards of tech, but Leo felt isolated in a bubble of tension. What are you going to do? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. My duty, Kayla said. I am authorized to quarantine anomalies. In your case, that means reporting you to the system core for diagnostic review and probable erasure. Erasure. The word hit Leo like a physical blow. He'd feared exposure, mockery, even assassination by jealous elites. But erasure, being deleted from existence by the very system that had given him power, was a horror he hadn't fully considered. His hands trembled, not entirely from acting. You can't do that. I haven't hurt anyone. I'm just trying to survive. Survival is irrelevant, Kayla said, her tone chillingly matter-of-fact. System integrity is paramount. Your continued existence represents a corruption. However, she tilted her head, as if consulting an internal readout. The core prefers voluntary compliance. If you submit to a full trait scan and allow me to apply a stabilizing patch, the process may be less disruptive. You may even retain some functionality, albeit neutered. Leo's mind screamed in protest. A scan? A patch? That would expose everything, his true level, his hidden stats, the sheer scale of his farming. And neutered likely meant stripping his trait entirely, reducing him back to a genuine F rank. Or worse, turning him into a vegetable. He couldn't allow it. Every instinct told him to run, to fight, but he forced himself to stay still, to look defeated. I need time to think, he stammered, taking a half-step back. Time is a resource you do not have, Kayla said. She raised a hand, and a complex, holographic interface materialized in the air before her, lines of scrolling code and pulsating nodes. Compliance is required now. Please remain stationary for scanning. That was his cue. As Kayla's fingers danced across the hologram, initiating the scan, Leo acted. He didn't run, not in human form. Instead, he triggered slime mimicry. The transformation was instantaneous and disorienting. His body dissolved, bones and muscle melting into a cohesive, jelly-like mass. His clothes sank into his form, becoming part of the slime. His perspective shifted, he could see in a 360-degree blur of colors and shapes, and hear through vibrations in his gelatinous body. To onlookers, it would have looked like Leo simply collapsed into a puddle of translucent goo. Kayla's scan beam, a cone of blue light, passed over where he'd stood, hitting empty air. She froze, her interface flashing with error messages. Subject displaced. Form alteration detected. Analyzing. Slime mimicry, S-rank skill. Origin, anomalous reward. Clever, she murmured, a hint of irritation in her voice. But insufficient. Leo didn't wait. He oozed across the ground, moving faster than any natural slime could, slipping between cracks in the cobblestones and under a nearby supply cart. The world was a smear of panic and opportunity. He could feel Kayla's presence like a cold spot, her system authority radiating pressure. He needed distance. Anomaly is attempting evasion, Kayla announced, not to him, but to the air. She tapped her interface. Dispatch Enforcer Squad. Grid coordinates, Camp Central. Target, Humanoid Slime Hybrid, F-Rank Facade, High Priority Anomaly. Authorization, Auditor Kayla, Case File Theta, 7. Leo heard it through the vibrations in the ground. Enforcer Squad. His slime form shuddered. He flowed out from under the cart and toward the camp's perimeter fence, a ragged wall of scrap metal and wire. A group of children playing nearby pointed and giggled, thinking him a wild slime that had wandered in. Good. Let them think that. Just as he reached a gap in the fence, a pulse of energy washed over the camp. 4 figures materialized in flashes of blue light, tall, armored humanoids with featureless helmets and glowing weapons. Enforcers. They moved with unnatural synchrony, their heads swiveling to lock onto his slime form. One raised a rifle-like device, it whined as it charged. Leo didn't hesitate. He squeezed through the gap, his gelatinous body deforming to fit. A beam of energy seared past, melting the metal where he'd been. Outside the camp, the ruined city sprawled, collapsed buildings, overgrown streets, the carcasses of old vehicles. He oozed into a drainage ditch, his mind racing. He couldn't stay in slime form forever, it drained a small amount of MP per minute, and while his pool was vast, it wasn't infinite. But reverting now would make him an easy target. He heard the enforcers clanking through the fence, their movements methodical. Kayla's voice echoed, amplified by some skill. Leo. Cease resistance. Each evasion increases your corruption metric. The core will not be merciful. Leo ignored her. He focused on his trait, a constant warmth in his core. Every failure, every penalty, it all made him stronger. This chase was just another quest to fail. He oozed deeper into the ruins, heading for a collapsed office building he'd scouted weeks ago. Its basement levels were a maze of debris, perfect to lose pursuers. As he slid into a dark crevice, a system notification flickered at the edge of his perception, not from the main system, but from his trait, as if responding to his desperation. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated, evasion failure detected. Converting. Agility plus 150%. Duration, permanent. His slime form suddenly felt lighter, faster. He streaked through the shadows, leaving a faint, glistening trail. Behind him, the enforcers fanned out, their sensors probing the darkness. Kayla stood at the camp's edge, watching, her hooded face unreadable. She didn't follow. Instead, she spoke into her interface again. Target is mobile and demonstrating adaptive abilities. Enforcers, pursue and capture. Use non-lethal suppression if possible, but prioritize containment. I will monitor from here. The anomaly must not be allowed to propagate further. Leo, now deep in the building's bowels, allowed himself a moment to solidify back into human form behind a collapsed desk. He was panting, not from exertion, but from adrenaline. His agility stat had jumped again, he could feel the difference, a coiled readiness in his limbs. But the enforcers were still out there, hunting him. And Kayla was watching, a sentinel of the system's wrath. He peered through a crack in the wall. Outside, in the dim light, he saw the 4 enforcers moving with eerie precision, scanning the area. One paused, its helmet tilting toward his hiding spot. Leo held his breath, his mind already plotting his next move, a failed stealth check, perhaps, to boost his evasion further. But for now, he was trapped, a mouse in a maze with high-tech cats on his trail. The chapter closed with Leo crouched in the darkness, the enforcers closing in, and Kayla's distant gaze like a weight on his soul. The game had changed, he was no longer just farming power in secret. He was a fugitive, and the system itself had issued a warrant. The air in the collapsed building tasted of dust and decay. Leo crouched behind a slab of concrete that had once been part of an office wall, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Through a crack in the debris, he watched 4 figures approach, the enforcers. They moved with unnatural synchronization, their forms clad in sleek, matte black armor that seemed to drink the weak afternoon light filtering through the ruined cityscape. Each step they took was precise, mechanical. No wasted motion. System NPCs, Leo thought, his mind racing. Not human survivors, but constructs designed to hunt anomalies like him. Their faces were hidden behind featureless helmets, but he could feel their gaze sweeping the rubble like scanners. One of them paused, a hand hovering over a device on its wrist. A soft ping echoed through the silence. Target signature detected within 20 meters, a flat, synthesized voice announced. Proceed with containment. Leo's breath hitched. He had to move. Now. Pushing off from his hiding spot, he scrambled deeper into the building's wreckage, his movements deliberately clumsy. He let his foot catch on a twisted rebar, stumbling forward with a grunt. The system prompt flashed in his vision, blue text against the grimy backdrop of broken plaster. Evasion check failed. Penalty, movement speed minus 10% for 30 seconds. A grin tugged at Leo's lips despite the danger. Here it comes. Almost instantly, another message overlaid the first, glowing with a faint golden hue only he could see. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Penalty converted, movement speed plus 50% permanently. Agility plus 15. A surge of energy jolted through his limbs. His body felt lighter, faster, as if the air itself had thinned to accommodate his newfound speed. He didn't pause to marvel at it, he'd grown accustomed to these sudden upgrades. Instead, he leaned into the stumble, making it look like a panicked flail as he burst out of the other side of the building into the open street. Target sighted, one of the enforcers called out, its voice devoid of emotion. Engage pursuit protocol. Leo didn't look back. He ran, his feet pounding over cracked asphalt littered with the detritus of the apocalypse, abandoned cars, shattered glass, the occasional skeletal remnant of a life interrupted. The ruined city stretched around him like a graveyard of steel and concrete. Skyscrapers leaned precariously, their windows blown out, while smaller buildings had been reduced to piles of rubble. The sky above was a washed-out gray, streaked with the faint, ghostly trails of system energy that sometimes flickered like faulty neon. He could hear the enforcers behind him, their footsteps a steady, relentless drumbeat. They were fast, but Leo's new speed boost gave him an edge. He wove through the debris, jumping over a fallen lamppost, sliding under the husk of a delivery truck. His mind worked overtime. He needed to lead them somewhere that could turn their pursuit into his advantage. Then he remembered. The nest. A place the survivors whispered about in hushed tones. A cluster of buildings near the old financial district that had been overrun by high-level monsters after the system integration. Predators that even A-rank parties avoided. It was perfect. Leo angled his run eastward, toward the towering shadows of the banking towers. As he did, he deliberately slowed his pace, letting the enforcers gain ground. He wanted them close, wanted them confident. Another system prompt appeared as he misjudged a leap over a pothole, landing awkwardly. Evasion check failed. Penalty, stamina drain increased. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Penalty converted, stamina regeneration plus 100%. Endurance plus 20. His breathing eased immediately, the burn in his muscles fading. He could run for hours now if he had to. But he didn't plan to. Up ahead, the street narrowed into a canyon between two half-collapsed buildings. The entrance to the nest. He could already sense the oppressive aura emanating from within, a mix of primal hunger and system-enhanced malice. Leo skidded to a stop at the mouth of the alley, pretending to hesitate. The enforcers closed in, forming a semicircle behind him. Their weapons hummed to life, energy blades extending from their wrists, glowing with a cold, blue light. Anomaly Leo, the lead enforcer intoned. You are charged with system exploitation. Submit for deletion. Delete this, Leo muttered under his breath, then raised his hands in a show of surrender. Wait. Don't hurt me. I'll come quietly. He took a step backward, into the alley's shadows. The enforcers advanced, their movement still precise but now with a hint of predatory anticipation. They thought he was cornered. Good. As soon as they crossed the threshold into the nest's territory, the environment shifted. The air grew thick and heavy, smelling of ozone and rot. Strange, chittering sounds echoed from the darkness deeper in. Leo's system interface flickered, a new quest appearing automatically. Stealth quest activated, avoid detection by the nest's inhabitants for 5 minutes. Reward, 500 EXP, failure penalty, alert all monsters in the area. Perfect. Leo didn't even try to hide. He stood there, in plain sight, as the enforcers fanned out around him. He waited until the quest timer started counting down, 5 minutes. Then he took a deep breath and shouted at the top of his lungs. Hey! Ugly monsters! Dinner's here! His voice echoed off the walls, bouncing into the depths of the nest. For a second, there was silence. Then a chorus of roars and screeches erupted, shaking the very ground. The enforcers froze, their heads swiveling toward the source of the noise. Target is attempting to use local fauna as a distraction, one said, its voice still flat. Eliminate quickly. But it was too late. From the shadows, shapes emerged. Creatures that defied easy description, a fusion of biological horror and system glitches. One had the body of a lion but with metallic scales and too many eyes. Another slithered on tentacles, its maw lined with crystalline teeth. Their levels floated above them in red text: Level 85 Corrupted Gorgon, Level 92 Void Lurker, Level 88 Rusthide Behemoth. The enforcers shifted their focus, raising their energy blades toward the new threat. Leo seized the moment. He ducked low and sprinted past them, deeper into the alley. The stealth quest timer ticked down, 4 minutes, 30 seconds. He made no attempt to be quiet. He kicked a pile of rubble, sending stones clattering. He even whistled a tuneless melody. The monsters noticed. The Gorgon lunged first, its metallic claws scraping against the enforcer's armor. A fight erupted, blades of energy meeting claws and teeth. Leo kept moving, weaving through the chaos. He saw an enforcer get pinned by the Rusthide Behemoth, its armor cracking under the weight. Another was wrapped in the Void Lurker's tentacles, struggling to break free. But they were system constructs, efficient and deadly. One enforcer managed to decapitate the Gorgon with a clean strike, its body dissolving into pixels. Another blasted the Void Lurker with a concentrated energy beam. They were winning, slowly but surely. Leo needed more. He reached a dead end, a collapsed wall blocking the alley. Perfect. He turned to face the fray, raising his hands again as if in panic. The remaining 2 enforcers broke away from the monsters, advancing on him. The stealth quest timer hit 0. Stealth quest failed. Penalty: all monsters in the nest are now alerted to your presence. A wave of energy pulsed from Leo, visible as a ripple in the air. Every monster in the vicinity turned its attention toward him. Their eyes glowed with renewed fury. The enforcers hesitated, caught between Leo and the enraged horde. Then, the golden text. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Penalty converted, area of effect damage reflection plus 500% for 10 seconds. All incoming damage within 50 meters will be reflected back to the source, multiplied. Leo's body shimmered with a faint, golden aura. He didn't move. He just stood there, a smile playing on his lips. "Come and get me," he whispered. The monsters charged. The enforcers, following their protocol, attacked as well, energy blades swinging toward Leo. The Rusthide Behemoth roared and slammed its fist down. The Void Lurker's remaining kin sprayed acid. Everything hit at once, a concentrated barrage of damage that should have vaporized him. Instead, the golden aura flared. A shockwave erupted from Leo, silent but devastating. It wasn't a physical blast, but a reversal of energy. The enforcers' own attacks rebounded on them, magnified 5-fold. Their armor shattered, their forms flickering with error messages. The monsters' assaults turned inward, the behemoth's fist crumpled its own chest, the acid melted its caster. For a second, the alley was filled with light and chaos. Then silence. The enforcers lay in broken heaps, their bodies dissolving into streams of data that faded into the air. The monsters were gone, reduced to piles of ash and glitching pixels. Leo stood untouched, the golden aura fading. System messages flooded his vision, scrolling too fast to read at first. Quest failed, stealth. Reward conversion, 5 million EXP. Enemies defeated, for elite enforcers, 7 high-level monsters. Bonus EXP, 2 million. Level up. Level up. Level up. He lost count after the 5th notification. His status screen updated. He was now level 112, his stats bloated with the accumulated boosts from his intentional failures. But the system wasn't done. Error messages popped up, red and frantic. System error, anomalous energy spike detected. Error, trait interaction beyond parameters. Warning, stability compromised in Sector 7. The blue screens flickered around him, some showing static, others displaying garbled code. Leo took a deep breath, the adrenaline still coursing through him. He had won. Again. But at what cost? The system was glitching harder than ever. He needed to move, to find somewhere to lay low and... A slow clap echoed from the entrance of the alley. Leo spun around. There, standing amid the dissipating data streams, was Auditor Kayla. She had shed her hood, revealing a face that was both human and not, her features too perfect, her eyes glowing with a soft, internal light. In her hands, she held a weapon Leo had never seen before, a sleek, silver rod that hummed with a frequency that made his teeth ache. Impressive, Kayla said, her voice no longer flat but laced with a cold, analytical curiosity. You turned my enforcers into a power-up. I'll have to note that in my report. She took a step forward, the rod crackling with energy. But playtime is over, Leo. This is a nullifier. It suppresses anomalous traits within its field. Your little Boon won't save you now. She raised the weapon, and a dome of shimmering energy expanded from its tip, washing over Leo. He felt it immediately, a sudden, hollow sensation in his chest, as if part of him had been muted. His status screen flickered. Trait, Perpetual Underdog's Boon, suppressed. Duration, unknown. For the first time since the apocalypse began, Leo felt genuine fear. He was alone with his raw stats, facing an auditor who knew exactly what he was. And she was smiling. Let's see how you fare without your cheat code, Kayla said, leveling the nullifier at him. Try to fail your way out of this one. The air in the nest still crackled with residual energy from the explosion. Smoke curled from the corpses of enforcers and monsters alike, their bodies dissolving into pixelated dust that shimmered in the dim light filtering through the ruined skyscraper's shattered windows. Leo stood at the center of the carnage, breathing heavily, not from exhaustion, but from the adrenaline of his latest conversion. His status screen flickered before his eyes, a cascade of notifications he'd learned to ignore. Quest failed, stealth approach. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated, penalty converted. Area of effect damage reflection, 500,000 damage dealt. EXP gained, 2,500,000. Level up, 147-153. He dismissed the screens with a mental flick, his focus sharpening on the lone figure emerging from the shadows. Auditor Kayla stepped over the dissolving remains of an enforcer, her hooded cloak billowing in a non-existent wind. Up close, she was younger than he'd expected, perhaps in her late 20s, with sharp features and eyes that glowed with a faint blue light, like fragments of the system itself. In her hands, she held a weapon unlike any Leo had seen, a sleek, metallic staff that pulsed with a rhythmic, anti-light, as if it were drinking the illumination from the air around it. Leo, she said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. Designation, F-rank reject. Anomaly code, Theta 7. Leo forced his shoulders to slump, adopting the cowering posture he'd perfected over weeks of pretending. I don't know what you're talking about. I just got lucky. The system glitched, N. Save it, Kayla interrupted, raising the staff. I've reviewed your logs. 247 failed quests in 30 days. Each failure accompanied by system errors and exponential stat growth. Probability of natural occurrence, 0.001%. You're exploiting a bug in the Perpetual Underdog's Boon trait, a trait that shouldn't exist. She took a step forward, and Leo felt it, a sudden, chilling absence. It was like a part of his soul had been muted. His trait, the constant hum of potential conversion in the back of his mind, went silent. No prompts, no notifications, just the raw numbers of his hidden stats. His heart hammered against his ribs. For the first time since the apocalypse, he was truly vulnerable. This is a nullifier, Kayla said, tapping the staff against the ground. A ripple of dark energy spread out, causing the rubble at their feet to tremble. It suppresses anomalous traits within a 50-meter radius. Your cheat code is offline, Leo. Now, let's see what you really are. She moved faster than he anticipated. One moment she was 10 feet away, the next, the staff was slicing toward his head. Leo reacted on instinct, his body moving with the enhanced agility of a level 153, stats he'd never had to rely on directly. He ducked, feeling the whoosh of air as the staff passed inches from his scalp. The movement was clumsy compared to his usual grace when his trait was active, but it was enough. Interesting, Kayla murmured, her eyes narrowing. Your physical parameters are inconsistent with an F rank. Strength, agility, vitality, all reading at B rank minimum. How are you masking this? Leo didn't answer. He lunged forward, aiming a punch at her midsection. It was a straightforward attack, something he'd seen brawlers use in the survivor camps. But with his hidden strength stat, now over 500 after countless conversions, his fist cut through the air like a projectile. Kayla brought the staff up to block, and the impact echoed through the ruined chamber with a metallic clang. She staggered back, surprise flashing across her face for the first time. You're stronger than the logs indicate, she said, regaining her balance. But strength alone won't save you. She spun the staff, and it extended, segments clicking into place until it was twice its original length. With a flick of her wrist, she activated a skill. System Override, Kinetic Lock. Blue tendrils of energy shot from the staff, wrapping around Leo's limbs. He tried to move, but his muscles seized, locked in place by the system's own enforcement protocols. Panic surged. Without his trait, he couldn't convert this debuff into a boost. He was trapped. I'm taking you in for analysis, Kayla said, approaching calmly. The core needs to understand how you're corrupting the framework. If you cooperate, I might recommend deletion rather than full erasure. Leo's mind raced. His trait was suppressed, but his stats were real. He focused on his status screen, pulling it up mentally. It was still there, just silent. Name, Leo. Level, 153. Rank, F, Hidden, Unknown. Strength, 512. Agility, 489. Vitality, 550. Intelligence, 45. Traits, Perpetual Underdog's Boon, suppressed. Skills, Slime Mimicry, Cleansing Aura, Basic Swordsmanship. He had skills. Slime Mimicry was useless here, it was a transformation ability, not a combat one. But Cleansing Aura, it was a passive he'd gotten from failing the latrine quest, designed to negate minor debuffs. Would it work against a system override? He activated it silently, feeling a warm glow spread from his core. The blue tendrils around his limbs flickered, their hold weakening slightly. Not enough to break free, but enough to twitch his fingers. Kayla was within reach now, her hand outstretched to place a restraint collar on him. You're not what you seem, she said, almost to herself. But anomalies must be corrected. As her fingers brushed his neck, Leo made his move. With a grunt of effort, he channeled all his strength into one arm, focusing on the cleansing aura to push against the kinetic lock. The tendrils strained, and for a second, they parted enough for him to swing. He didn't aim for her. He aimed for the nullifier staff. His fist connected with the middle of the staff, right where the pulsing dark energy was concentrated. The impact was deafening, a crack of splitting metal and shattering glass. The nullifier's glow flared violently, then died, leaving the staff fractured and inert. The suppression field vanished, and Leo's trait roared back to life, flooding his mind with notifications he barely registered. Nullification effect ended. Perpetual Underdog's Boon reactivated. Debuff conversion available. Kayla stumbled back, staring at the broken staff in her hands. Impossible, she whispered. This is a system artifact. It shouldn't be breakable by physical force. Leo didn't wait for her to recover. He charged, this time with the confidence of his trait humming in his veins. He threw a punch, intentionally pulling it at the last second to make it look weaker than it was. Kayla dodged easily, but that was the point, he wanted her to see him as clumsy. You've damaged system property, she said, her voice cold with fury. This is no longer an audit. This is a termination order. She dropped the broken staff and raised her hands. System invocation, data spike. A spear of pure blue energy materialized above her, sharp and humming with lethal intent. It shot toward Leo, too fast to dodge. He let it hit him, embracing the failure. Incoming attack, data spike. Damage negated, Perpetual Underdog's Boon conversion. Penalty converted, vitality plus 150%, damage reflection, 200%. The spike struck his chest, and shattered. The energy rebounded, slamming into Kayla and throwing her against a crumbling wall. She gasped, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Her eyes widened as she saw Leo standing unharmed, a faint golden aura shimmering around him from the conversion. You turned it, she breathed. Even without the nullifier, you're converting penalties. How? Leo didn't answer. He advanced, but Kayla was already moving. She tapped a device on her wrist, and a portal of swirling light opened behind her. This isn't over, Leo, she said, her voice strained. I've seen your true power now. The system will know. It will bring its full wrath down on you. You can't hide forever. She stepped backward into the portal, and it collapsed with a sound like breaking glass. Leo was alone again, surrounded by the aftermath of battle. He sank to his knees, not from fatigue, but from the weight of her words. The broken nullifier staff lay at his feet, a stark reminder that the system was not just a passive interface, it was sentient, and it was hunting him. He'd revealed too much. In that moment of desperation, he'd shown glimpses of his hidden stats, and Kayla had seen through his facade. The game was up. He could no longer pretend to be just a lucky fool. The system knew he was an anomaly. As if on cue, the air around him shuddered. Blue screens flickered into existence, not just in his vision, but in the physical world, hovering in the air like ghostly projections. They glitched, lines of code scrolling too fast to read, before resolving into a single, stark message. It wasn't just for him, it echoed across the ruins, audible as a synthesized voice that boomed from the sky itself. Global alert, anomaly detected. Initiating purge protocol. All survivors, report anomaly Theta 7. Reward, 1 million EXP, legendary item. Failure to comply, penalty. The message repeated, scrolling across every broken billboard and shattered screen in the city. Leo stared, his blood running cold. The purge protocol. He'd heard rumors of it, a system-wide cleansing mechanism for threats it couldn't integrate. Now, it was targeting him. Every survivor on Earth would be hunting him, lured by the promise of unimaginable rewards. He rose slowly, his mind racing. He couldn't stay here. The nest was compromised, and the enforcers might have been just the first wave. He needed to move, to hide, but where could he go when the system itself was his enemy? A soft chime in his mind drew his attention. A new notification, personal this time. System notice, Perpetual Underdog's Boon has logged the nullifier suppression event. Trait evolution available. Convert recent vulnerability into permanent resistance. Y/N. Leo almost laughed. Even in this moment of crisis, his trait was offering him a way out. He selected yes, feeling a surge of warmth as his body adapted. But it was a small comfort. The global alert still hung in the air, a death sentence broadcast to the world. He looked down at his hands, still trembling slightly. For months, he'd farmed power from failure, hiding behind a mask of weakness. Now, the mask was cracking, and the world was watching. He couldn't hide forever, Kayla was right. But maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to. If the system wanted a purge, he'd give it one. He'd turn every failure, every penalty, into a weapon. But first, he had to survive. He activated slime mimicry, his body dissolving into a gelatinous, translucent form. As a slime, he could slip through cracks, avoid detection, and buy time. He oozed toward a drainage pipe, leaving the broken nullifier behind. The city was no longer safe. He needed to find a place to regroup, to plan. As he disappeared into the darkness, the global alert continued to pulse, a beacon calling for his head. Leo, the F-rank reject, was now the most wanted man on Earth. And deep down, beneath the fear, a spark of defiance ignited. Let them come. Let them all come. Every failure would only make him stronger. The world screamed. Leo stumbled through the ruins of what was once a suburban neighborhood, his slime form melting back into human shape as he gasped for air. The system's alert still burned behind his eyelids, a pulsing, crimson message that hovered in the corner of his vision like a brand. Global alert, purge protocol activated. Target, anomaly Theta 7. Reward, 10 million EXP, legendary artifact choice. Status, active. The sky had turned the color of a fresh bruise, purple and green swirls that churned like poisoned milk. From those clouds descended not rain, but monsters. They fell like hail, shrieking as they hit the ground, scaled creatures with too many legs, floating spheres that crackled with electricity, humanoid figures made of shadow and rusted metal. All of them bore the same marker above their heads, Purge Unit. And all of them were looking for him. Leo ducked behind the shattered wall of a convenience store as a pack of six-legged hounds loped past, their nostrils flaring. He could feel it, a pull, a magnetic attraction. The system was guiding them directly to his location. His heart hammered against his ribs. He'd been running for hours, ever since Kayla's portal had snapped shut and the alert had echoed across the ruined world. His slime form had let him slip through cracks and sewers, but the purge was relentless. It wasn't just monsters. The ground trembled with localized earthquakes. Lightning struck in precise, targeted bolts. A nearby building spontaneously combusted, flames licking at the sky in a column of orange and black. All of it, aimed at him. Think, Leo, think, he muttered, pressing his back against the cool concrete. His status screen flickered. He was level 312 now, a number that would make any S-rank guild leader weep with envy. But his public display still read, F rank, reject. The facade was cracking, though. With the purge active, every survivor with a system interface could see the alert. They'd be hunting him too, lured by the reward. A quest notification popped up, unbidden. Protection quest, survive the purge wave. Objective, remain alive for 10 minutes. Reward, 100 EXP. Failure penalty, death. Leo's lips twisted into a grim smile. A protection quest. Designed to be impossible to fail. Or designed to kill him. It didn't matter. He had a plan. He waited until the hounds circled back, their glowing red eyes locking onto his hiding spot. Then he burst from cover, not toward safety, but toward the open street. Hey! Over here, he yelled, waving his arms. The hounds charged. Leo didn't run. He stood his ground, letting the first one leap. Its jaws closed around his arm, or tried to. His hidden defense stat was too high. The teeth scraped harmlessly against skin that might as well have been steel. But the system registered it as an attack. Damage received, 5. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Damage converted, defense plus 50%, health regen plus 200% for 5 minutes. Warmth flooded his body. His skin tingled, becoming denser, tougher. He grinned. This was the game now, intentional failure, on a grand scale. He turned and ran, not from the monsters, but toward the densest cluster of them. A floating sphere crackled, firing a bolt of lightning. Leo didn't dodge. He took it full in the chest, the electricity arcing across his body. Pain flashed, then vanished as his trait activated again. Lightning debuff, agility -20%. Converted, agility plus 100%, lightning resistance acquired. His movements became fluid, blurring. He zipped between monsters, leading them on a chaotic chase through the ruins. Each attack they landed, each environmental hazard he failed to avoid, triggered his trait. His stats ballooned. By the time the 10-minute protection quest timer expired, he'd gained 7 new resistances, tripled his health pool, and acquired a temporary skill called Purge Sense, that let him feel the approaching waves before they hit. Quest failed. Reward conversion, 500,000 EXP, item, Purge Seal Amulet. The amulet appeared in his hand, a dull gray stone on a leather cord. It hummed with a low frequency that seemed to dampen the targeting pull slightly. Not enough to stop the purge, but enough to give him breathing room. He needed shelter. Somewhere with people. Monsters he could handle. But if every survivor on Earth was after him, safety in numbers might be the only play. Or the most dangerous one. He ran for another hour, using his enhanced agility to leap over rubble and dart through crumbling alleys. The purge waves came in intervals, 5 minutes of relentless assault, then a 2-minute lull. During one lull, he spotted smoke on the horizon. A settlement. Fort Hope, according to a faded sign nailed to a fence. It was built in the shell of a shopping mall, walls reinforced with scrap metal and concrete. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their weapons glinting in the sickly light. Leo approached cautiously, dropping his slime form entirely. He needed to look human. Weak. Pathetic. He stumbled toward the main gate, clutching his side as if injured. Help, he cried, his voice cracking with practiced fear. The guards turned, crossbows raised. One of them, a woman with a scar across her cheek, narrowed her eyes. Halt. Identify. Leo, he gasped, falling to his knees. Just, a survivor. The purge, it's everywhere. The guards exchanged glances. The scarred woman lowered her crossbow slightly. You alone? Yes. Please, let me in. I can't. I can't outrun it. She nodded to another guard, who opened a small side gate. Get in quick. And don't cause trouble. We've got our own problems. Leo scrambled inside. The settlement was a hive of activity, makeshift tents set up in the mall's atrium, children huddled around small fires, adults repairing gear or cooking meager rations. But the atmosphere was tense. Everyone had seen the alert. He could feel eyes on him, hear the whispers. Another refugee. Look at him, F rank. Pathetic. Did you see the reward? 10 million EXP, imagine. Leo kept his head down, moving toward a quieter corner. But the system had other plans. Settlement quest, defend Fort Hope. Objective, protect 10 civilians from Purge Wave. Reward, 1000 EXP. Failure penalty, reputation loss. Another protection quest. Perfect. He positioned himself near a group of families huddled under a tarp. The next Purge Wave hit. Monsters materialized at the walls, this time, flying creatures with razor-sharp wings. They dove toward the settlement. The guards fired, but there were too many. Leo acted. He didn't fight. Instead, he failed. He stepped in front of a diving creature, letting it slash at his chest. The attack bounced off, but the system registered it. Protection failure, civilian in danger. Converted, damage absorption shield acquired, extends to 10-meter radius. A shimmering dome of energy erupted around him, enveloping the families. The next creature slammed into it and disintegrated. The civilian stared, wide-eyed. What was that? A young mother whispered. Luck, Leo said quickly, forcing a tremble into his voice. Just a lucky glitch. The system's acting weird with the purge. He repeated the process. Each time the shield faltered, he failed to maintain it, triggering his trait to reinforce it or grant a new defensive skill. He saved a child from a falling piece of debris by failing to move fast enough, gaining instant teleport, short range. He failed to block a poison cloud, acquiring toxin immunity. With each save, the whispers grew louder. He's not just lucky. Did you see that? He took a hit that would have killed a B rank. The purge, it's focused near him. Leo's heart sank. He was drawing attention. The very thing he needed to avoid. But he couldn't stop, the protection quests kept coming, and failing them was boosting his power exponentially. He was level 335 now, his hidden stats so bloated he felt like a god wearing a beggar's rags. After the wave receded, a man approached. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a greatsword strapped to his back and an A-rank badge gleaming on his chest. Garrick, the settlement leader. His eyes were hard, calculating. You, Garrick said, his voice a low rumble. Leo, is it? Yes, sir, Leo said, bowing his head. Thank you for the shelter. Don't thank me yet. Garrick stepped closer, his gaze sweeping over Leo's tattered clothes, his trembling hands. I've been watching. You've saved a dozen of my people. With unusual methods. Just luck, Leo insisted. The system's glitching. You saw the alert. I did. Garrick's hand rested on his sword hilt. Anomaly Theta 7. A massive reward. And the purge, it's not random. It's targeting something. Or someone. Leo's blood ran cold. He kept his expression blank. What are you saying? I'm saying that ever since you arrived, the attacks have intensified. The monsters are clawing at the walls specifically near your position. The lightning strikes. All within 50 feet of you. Garrick leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper only Leo could hear. You're the anomaly, aren't you? The settlement had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. Leo could see it in their faces, fear, suspicion, greed. 10 million EXP. A legendary artifact. It was a temptation too great. I don't know what you're talking about, Leo said, taking a step back. I'm just an F rank. A reject. An F rank who soloed a shadow behemoth? Who survived an auditor hunt? Garrick's smile was thin, humorless. The rumors have reached even this backwater. Leo the lucky fool. Except there's no such thing as luck in the system. Only traits and exploits. Leo's mind raced. Denial was pointless. Garrick had pieced it together. But outright admission. That would make him a target for every survivor here. He needed to deflect. To control the narrative. The system is broken, Leo said, raising his voice so others could hear. It's targeting me because I've been hit with glitches. Failed quests that give rewards. Debuffs that turn into buffs. I don't know why. But if I'm causing the purge, then I'll leave. You don't have to risk your people. He turned to go, but Garrick's hand shot out, gripping his shoulder. The grip was firm, testing. Leo could have shrugged it off easily with his strength, but he let it hold him. Leaving won't save us, Garrick said. The purge will follow you. And if you die out there, the reward goes unclaimed. But if you're here, he paused, his eyes gleaming. I have a proposal. What proposal? A duel. Here and now. In the settlement arena. Garrick released him, stepping back. If you win, you stay. We protect you as best we can, and you help us weather the purge. If I win, I claim the reward. And the system might call off the purge once you're gone. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A duel? An A-rank warrior against an F-rank reject? It was a slaughter waiting to happen. But Leo saw the trap. Garrick wasn't just after the reward. He wanted to test him. To see what he was really capable of. Leo swallowed. A duel meant fighting in front of everyone. He'd have to hold back, to maintain the facade. But with his trait, he could fail intentionally, farm more power, and maybe win without revealing his true level. It was risky. But so was running. Alright, Leo said, meeting Garrick's gaze. I accept. The crowd erupted into noise. Garrick smiled, a real one this time, full of predatory anticipation. To the arena. Now. As Leo followed him through the settlement, the system pinged. Duel quest, face Garrick. Objective, defeat the A-rank warrior. Reward, 5,000 EXP, settlement ally. Failure penalty, death or capture. Another quest to fail. Another chance to grow stronger. But as he stepped into the makeshift arena, a cleared space in the mall's food court, Leo felt a chill. Garrick drew his great sword, the metal singing in the toxic air. The settlers formed a ring around them, their eyes hungry. This wasn't just a duel. It was an execution. Or an exposition. And Leo was the main attraction. The morning sun filtered through the cracked dome of Fort Hope Central Arena, casting long shadows across the packed dirt floor. Leo stood at one end, his posture deliberately slumped, hands tucked into the pockets of his patched jacket. Across from him, Garrick, leader of Fort Hope, rolled his shoulders, the polished plates of his A-rank armor catching the light. A crowd of survivors lined the makeshift bleachers, wooden planks laid over rubble, their murmurs a low, anxious hum. They'd come to see the duel that would decide whether the strange F-rank, blamed for the system's purge, would be exiled or allowed to stay. Garrick's voice boomed, echoing off the ruined walls. Leo, the so-called reject. The system marks you as the anomaly behind the monsters targeting us. I give you this chance, yield now, leave Fort Hope, and I'll spare you the humiliation. Leo kept his eyes downcast, playing the part. I didn't ask for any of this, he said, his tone wavering with feigned fear. Inside, his mind was racing. The perpetual Underdog's Boon hummed in his consciousness, a silent promise. He'd planned this, lose intentionally, but make it look close. Use failures to boost his stats without revealing his true level, currently hidden at 999, a secret even he barely grasped. I just want to survive. Survival requires strength, Garrick snapped. He drew his sword, a gleaming blade etched with runes that glowed with a soft blue light. And you have none. Let's end this quickly. The system interface flashed between them, displaying the duel parameters in glowing text, duel initiated, Leo, F-rank, versus Garrick, A-rank. Objective, reduce opponent's HP to 0. No lethal blows permitted. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. The mismatch was absurd, an F-rank against an A-rank. But Leo saw opportunity in every line of code. Garrick charged, his movements fluid and powerful. Leo didn't dodge. He let the first swing graze his shoulder, a calculated move. Pain flared, but he leaned into it, stumbling backward. The system logged, attack failed, dodge check. Damage taken, 15 HP. Immediately, a hidden message flickered in Leo's vision, visible only to him, Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Penalty converted, agility plus 150%, precision plus 50%. A surge of energy coursed through him. His senses sharpened, the world seemed to slow. Garrick's next thrust came in a blur, but Leo could see every micro-movement. He pretended to fumble, tripping over his own feet and falling to one knee. The sword tip missed his chest by inches. Pathetic. Garrick roared, but there was a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Leo's clumsiness had been too perfectly timed. Leo pushed himself up, dust clinging to his clothes. Lucky stumble, he muttered, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Some laughed, others watched with narrowed eyes. He needed to fail more, but make it look like struggle. He lunged forward, a wild, telegraphed punch aimed at Garrick's midsection. Garrick sidestepped easily, parrying with the flat of his blade. Attack failed, hit roll. Penalty, strength debuff for 5 seconds. The boon triggered again, conversion, strength plus 200%, critical hit chance plus 10%. Leo's muscles tightened with hidden power. He could have shattered Garrick's armor with a thought, but he held back, letting the debuff show on his system visible status, a flicker of red numbers for the crowd to see. Garrick pressed the advantage, a series of controlled strikes that Leo barely blocked with his forearms, each impact sending him staggering. With each failure, failed blocks, missed counters, the boon stacked bonuses, defense boosts, stamina regeneration, even a minor health steal effect. Leo's hidden stats swelled, but outwardly, he was a panting, bruised underdog. "You're tougher than you look," Garrick grunted after a particularly clumsy exchange that left Leo sprawled in the dirt. He wasn't smiling anymore. Sweat beaded on his brow. Leo's act was working, the duel was dragging, and Garrick's confidence was wavering. The crowd's murmurs shifted from mockery to uneasy curiosity. Leo rose slowly, wiping blood from a cut on his lip. He'd taken more hits than necessary, each one a calculated failure. His HP bar, visible to all, hovered at 30%, while Garrick's was still at 85%. But Leo's real health, hidden by the boon, was near full, regenerating with every foe mistake. "I just don't know when to quit," Leo said, forcing a weak smile. Garrick's eyes hardened. "Then I'll teach you." He activated a skill, Aura of Suppression, an A-rank ability that reduced an opponent's stats by 20%. The air thickened around Leo, a visible shimmer of force. Leo leaned into it, letting his knees buckle. Status effect applied, all stats reduced. The boon responded instantly, penalty converted, all stats plus 300% for 60 seconds. Resistance to aura effects acquired. For a moment, Leo felt the full weight of his hidden power, a tidal wave of strength that begged to be unleashed. He clamped it down, his body trembling with the effort. To the crowd, it looked like he was on the verge of collapse. Garrick moved in for the finish, his sword raised high for a non-lethal pommel strike. This was the moment. Leo failed to evade, turning his shoulder into the blow. The impact was solid, and he let himself be driven to the ground, rolling with the force. Critical hit taken, HP now 10%. The boon flared, conversion, instant HP recovery to 50%, precision plus 500% for next attack. As Garrick stepped closer, confident in his victory, Leo saw an opening, a tiny gap in the armor at the hip. With his boosted precision, it was as wide as a canyon. He pushed up from the ground, a clumsy, desperate lunge. His fist connected not with force, but with perfect placement, tapping the rune on Garrick's belt that regulated his armor's energy flow. It was a move no F-rank should have been able to see, let alone execute. Garrick froze, his armor flickering and going dormant. The system logged, dual condition met, opponent's HP not reduced, but primary weapon disabled. Victory awarded to Leo. A stunned silence fell over the arena. Then, scattered applause broke out, mixed with shouts of disbelief. Leo collapsed to his knees, playing exhausted. His visible HP bar ticked up slowly to 20%, a merciful system adjustment. Garrick stared at his darkened armor, then at Leo. He sheathed his sword, a grudging respect in his eyes. "You didn't beat me with strength," he said quietly, so only Leo could hear. "That was clever. Too clever for an F rank. What are you really?" Before Leo could respond, a disturbance erupted at the arena's entrance. The crowd parted as a figure in a dark hood strode in, the system auditor. Her presence was cold, authoritative. Beside her floated a shimmering, geometric object, a sentient system fragment, its surface alive with scrolling data streams. It looked like a crystalline polyhedron, emitting a soft, pulsing light. "The duel is irrelevant," the auditor announced, her voice cutting through the noise. "This anomaly requires direct analysis." She gestured to the fragment. "Scan him. Full trait diagnostic." Leo's heart hammered. He'd been expecting her, but not this, not a sentient piece of the system itself. He stayed on his knees, head bowed, hoping his slouched posture would hide the panic in his eyes. The fragment floated toward him, a beam of light extending from its core to wash over his body. Garrick stepped back, watching intently. The crowd fell silent, sensing a shift. The fragment screen displayed rapid text, subject, Leo. Rank, F, initial scan, traits hidden. Deep analysis initiated. Leo held his breath. The Boon was active, a silent shield, but this was different, a direct probe from the system's own consciousness. The fragment word, its light intensifying. Data scrolled faster, error, trait inconsistency. Recalculating, then, the screen glitched violently, pixels distorting into chaotic patterns. Numbers flashed, 999, 999, 999, repeating in a frenzied loop. The fragment emitted a high-pitched whine, its light strobing erratically. The auditor's eyes widened. What is this? Report. The fragment's voice, synthesized and strained, crackled out. Anomaly detected. True level, 999. Trait, Perpetual Underdog's Boon, classified as error. Error. It shuddered in mid-air, sparks flying from its edges. The crowd erupted into chaos, shouts, gasps, the clatter of people scrambling back. Garrick's jaw dropped, his earlier suspicion hardening into shock. Leo remained still, but inside, his mind raced. The facade was crumbling. The fragment's glitching screen reflected in his eyes, the number 999 burning like a brand. The auditor stared at him, her expression a mix of horror and fury. Level 999, she whispered. Impossible. Around them, the system itself seemed to react. Blue screens flickered in the air, displaying corrupted messages. The arena's light dimmed, shadows lengthening as if the world held its breath. Leo knew what came next, the cliffhanger of his exposed secret, the inevitable escalation. But for now, he was just a man on his knees, with a god's power hidden in his bones, and every eye upon him. The arena fell into a silence so profound Leo could hear the frantic beating of his own heart. The system fragment hovered before him, its crystalline surface still flickering with the damning numbers, anomaly detected. True level, 999. The blue light cast long shadows across the packed stands, where hundreds of survivors from Fort Hope stared, their expressions frozen in disbelief. Leo's mind raced. Years of careful concealment, of playing the fool, of enduring mockery and humiliation, all undone in an instant by this glitching piece of system technology. He could feel the weight of their gazes, Garrick's narrowed eyes from where he knelt on the arena floor, nursing his damaged armor, the children who'd once thrown pebbles at the F-rank reject, the hardened warriors who dismissed him as garbage. Now they saw the truth, and it terrified them. The system auditor, a woman named Kayla whose hood had fallen back to reveal sharp, angular features and eyes that glowed with system code, took a step forward. Her voice, usually cold and measured, trembled with panic. Level 999, she whispered, then louder, addressing the fragment. Confirm scan. This is impossible. The highest recorded human level is 247. The fragment pulsed, emitting a distorted chime. Confirmed. Subject Leo designation, F-rank reject. Hidden parameters exceed system thresholds. Trait detected, Perpetual Underdog's Boon. Classification, catastrophic anomaly. Kayla's face paled. She'd suspected Leo was exploiting a bug, but this was beyond anything in her protocols. Her hands flew to a communication device on her wrist. All units, emergency priority. Anomaly confirmed as existential threat. Initiate immediate termination protocol. I repeat, terminate on sight. Leo didn't wait. The time for pretending was over. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, and with it, he released the mental restraints he'd placed on himself for so long. Power surged through him, a torrent of energy that made the air around him shimmer. The weak, stumbling posture he'd maintained for months straightened into something poised and deadly. His eyes, once downcast and fearful, now gleamed with a sharp, calculating light. You should have left me alone, he said, his voice carrying across the arena without effort. It was no longer the hesitant mumble of the reject, but clear, resonant, and utterly calm. Kayla stumbled back, raising her weapon, a sleek, silver rod that hummed with negation energy. Don't move. The system has authorized your deletion. From the edges of the arena, her enforcers appeared. 6 of them, clad in seamless black armor that seemed to drink the light, their faces hidden behind featureless helmets. They moved with unnatural synchronization, leveling energy rifles at Leo. Each was level 300 or higher, elite NPCs designed to handle rogue elements. To the survivors in the stands, they were nightmares made flesh. But to Leo, they were just more failures waiting to happen. He didn't bother with a dramatic speech. He simply moved. One moment he was standing near the center of the arena, the next, he was a blur of motion. The enforcers opened fire, beams of crimson energy slicing through the air. Leo didn't dodge. He let the first beam strike him square in the chest. Incoming damage, 5,000. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Damage converted to health regeneration, plus 10,000 HP/SEC for 30 seconds. A warm, tingling sensation spread through his body. The energy beam dissipated harmlessly against his skin. Leo smiled, a genuine, fierce smile he hadn't allowed himself in ages. He charged the nearest enforcer. The enforcer swung a monomolecular blade, a strike that could cut through tank armor. Leo caught it with his bare hand. The blade screeched against his palm, sparks flying, but didn't even break the skin. With a twist, he snapped the blade, then drove his fist through the enforcer's chest plate. The armor crumpled like paper, and the enforcer dissolved into pixels with a choked static scream. Enforcer defeated. Quest failure detected, survive enforcer squad. Reward conversion, agility plus 150%. Duration, permanent. Leo's movements became even faster, a ghost among the remaining enforcers. He didn't use fancy skills or magic, he relied on pure, overwhelming stats. He grabbed another enforcer by the helmet, lifted him off the ground, and threw him into two others. The impact sent them crashing through the arena wall, leaving a gaping hole into the ruined city beyond. Kayla watched, her weapon shaking in her hands. She fired a beam of negation energy, designed to suppress traits. It hit Leo in the back. For a second, his perpetual Underdog's Boon flickered, he felt a slight drain, like a hand trying to grip his soul. But it wasn't enough. The trait had grown too powerful, fed by countless failures. Trait suppression attempted. Conversion, trait potency plus 50%. Negation energy absorbed. Leo turned to her. "You're trying to hurt me with the very thing that makes me stronger," he said, almost pityingly. "Didn't your scans tell you that?" He closed the distance between them in a blink. Kayla tried to raise her weapon again, but Leo's hand closed around her wrist. He didn't squeeze hard, just enough to make her gasp and drop the rod. It clattered to the ground, its hum dying. "Please," she whispered, her system-enhanced eyes wide with terror. "The system, it will not allow this." "The system allowed me to exist," Leo replied softly, so only she could hear. "It gave me this trait. It called me a reject and sent me on impossible quests. Every time it tried to punish me, it made me stronger. Tell me, Auditor, who's the real anomaly here?" He released her, pushing her back gently. She stumbled, falling to her knees. Around them, the last of the enforcers lay in dissolving heaps. The arena was a wreck, scorch marks from energy beams, shattered stone, and that gaping hole in the wall. The survivors were utterly silent, too stunned even to scream. Garrick had risen to his feet, his face a mask of awe and dread. "All this time," he breathed. "You were, this." Leo didn't answer. He was looking at the sky. The blue system screens that perpetually hung overhead were flickering violently, lines of corrupted code scrolling too fast to read. The air grew heavy, charged with ozone and something deeper, a presence that made the very ground tremble. Kayla looked up, and a hysterical laugh escaped her. "You've done it now. You've forced its hand." The system fragment, still hovering nearby, began to emit a piercing whine. "Anomaly resistance exceeds protocol. Summoning ultimate enforcement entity. Entity of order, level 9999. Deployment imminent." A rift tore open in the sky above the arena. It wasn't a natural tear, it was geometric, perfect angles of blinding white light slicing through the reality. From it descended a being that defied comprehension. It was humanoid in shape, but constructed of shifting planes of light and crystal, with no discernible face, only a smooth, featureless head where a single symbol glowed, the system's insignia, a circle interlocked with binary code. It stood 3 times the height of a man, and its mere presence pressed down on the world, making the air too thick to breathe. Entity of order has arrived. Purpose, purge anomaly. Commencing erasure. The entity's voice was not sound, but a direct insertion into every mind in the vicinity. It was cold, devoid of emotion, absolute. It raised a hand, and the arena floor beneath Leo began to dissolve into nothingness, pixels unraveling into void. Leo didn't flinch. He felt a thrill, not of fear, but of anticipation. This was it. The ultimate test. A level 9999 enemy. A being designed to enforce the systems will without flaw. And he, Leo, the F-rank reject, stood against it with a trait that turned failure into victory. He let the dissolution reach his feet. The ground vanished, and he fell into darkness for a heartbeat before his trait activated. Environmental erasure detected. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Conversion, void immunity granted. Stat boost, vitality plus 300%. Duration, permanent. Leo landed on solid air, standing above the void as if on an invisible platform. His body glowed faintly with a new, resilient energy. He looked up at the entity of order. "You call me a cancer," Leo said, his voice carrying through the mental silence. "But I'm just a product of your own rules. You gave me this power. Every quest I failed, every debuff I suffered, you recorded it. You punished me. And I grew stronger. So tell me, entity, what does that make you?" The entity didn't respond with words. It attacked. A beam of pure order energy, capable of rewriting reality itself, lanced toward Leo. It was meant to not just kill him, but to unmake his very existence from the system's records. Leo didn't try to block it. He spread his arms and let it hit him full force. The world turned white. Pain, beyond anything he'd ever felt, seared through him, a pain that wasn't physical, but existential, as if his soul were being torn apart and reassembled wrong. But beneath it, the familiar, comforting chime of his trait. Reality rewrite attempted. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Conversion, reality anchor granted. Skill unlocked, orders mirror. Stat boost, intelligence plus 400%. Duration, permanent. The pain vanished. Leo stood unharmed, and in his mind, he understood. The entity's attack had tried to erase him, but his trait had not only nullified it, it had given him a piece of the entity's own power. He could feel the fabric of the system around him, the rules and codes that governed everything. And he could bend them. The entity paused, its symbol flashing rapidly. Anomaly has absorbed enforcement energy. Adapting protocol. Too late, Leo whispered. He raised a hand, mimicking the entity's gesture. From his palm, a beam of similar order energy erupted, but tinged with the chaotic, vibrant colors of his own trait. It struck the entity in its chest. Cracks spread across its crystalline form, glowing with leaked power. The entity staggered back, the first hint of something like surprise in its presence. Error. Anomaly exceeds projections. Escalating to final measure. The rift in the sky widened. More entities began to form within it, dozens, hundreds, each level 9999, their collective presence threatening to crush Fort Hope into dust. But Leo was already moving. He wasn't just fighting back now, he was learning. Every interaction, every attack, fed his trait and taught him more about the system's weaknesses. He turned to the crowd, to Garrick and Kayla and the terrified survivors. "Get out of here. Now." They didn't need telling twice. The stands erupted into chaos as people fled, scrambling over each other to escape the arena. Garrick grabbed Kayla, hauling her toward an exit, though she stared back at Leo with something akin to horrified fascination. Alone before the gathering storm of entities, Leo took a deep breath. This was no longer about hiding. It was about survival, and perhaps, about changing the rules of the game forever. The lead entity raised both hands, and the world began to unravel in earnest, reality peeling back like layers of an onion to reveal the cold, sterile code beneath. Leo grinned, a wild, reckless expression. "Let's see how many failures it takes to break you," he said, and charged into the light. The entity of order hovered in the air, a geometric nightmare of crystalline facets and shifting blue light that pulsed with the rhythm of the system itself. It had no face, no limbs in a conventional sense, just planes of energy that rearranged themselves with mathematical precision. Around it, the ruined cityscape seemed to warp, buildings straightening momentarily before crumbling again under the strain of reality trying to correct itself. Leo stood on the cracked asphalt below, his breath steady despite the pressure that threatened to flatten him. He dropped his weakling facade completely now, his body radiating a subtle golden aura that clashed with the entity's cold blue. Level 999, the number still felt surreal, a secret he'd guarded through countless humiliations. But against a level 9999 enforcer, it was nothing. Or it should have been. Anomaly Leo, 734, the entity's voice echoed, not through sound but directly into his mind, each syllable crisp and devoid of emotion. "You violate fundamental protocols. Your existence is a statistical impossibility. Termination is required. Leo grinned, a wild, reckless expression that felt alien on his face after months of forced cowering. Yeah, I get that a lot. But here's the thing, I'm really good at failing. He didn't wait for a response. Instead, he charged forward, not to attack, but to fail. The entity reacted instantly, a beam of order energy lancing from its core. Reality anchor, skill designed to lock targets in place, immune to evasion. Leo made no attempt to dodge. He spread his arms wide, embracing the strike. The impact was like being hit by a glacier. His muscles seized, his bones groaned, and the system notification flashed red in his vision: evasion failed. But beneath it, in shimmering gold text only he could see, Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated. Penalty conversion, reality immunity unlocked. Agility plus 500%. Pain vanished, replaced by a surge of power so intense it made his head spin. The reality anchor shattered around him, its energy absorbed into his being. He stumbled, not from weakness, but from the sudden influx. His agility stat, already astronomical, now felt limitless. The entity paused, its facets flickering in what might have been confusion. Interesting, it intoned. Trait interference detected. Adjusting termination parameters. Around them, the world was glitching. Blue system screens flickered in the air, showing error codes and fragmented data. Survivors who'd been hiding in the rubble, the ones Leo had ordered to flee, stared in awe as their own status screens wavered. A young woman clutching a child gasped as her stamina depleted. Debuff suddenly vanished, replaced by a temporary adrenaline surge. The system's grip was slipping. Leo didn't have time to ponder the implications. The entity unleashed a volley of attacks: chronological stasis, spatial fracture, conceptual erasure, each one a masterpiece of systemic enforcement, designed to delete anomalies from existence. Leo met them all with intentional failure. He let the stasis field catch him, freezing time around his body. Status resist failed. Conversion, chronomancy resistance acquired. Time-based skills reduced by 90% effectiveness. He stepped through the fractured space, not avoiding the tears but letting them slice into him. Damage mitigation failed. Conversion, spatial folding skill unlocked. Can teleport short distances through dimensional folds. The conceptual erasure was the worst, a wave of nothingness that sought to unmake his very identity. He focused on his trait, on the core of his being that thrived on failure. Existence check failed. Conversion, conceptual anchor passive gained. Immune to reality-altering effects. With each failure, he grew stronger. His health pool, already in the millions, swelled further. New skills blossomed in his mind: order mirror, system echo, failure cascade, all born from the entity's own arsenal, twisted by his trait. But he wasn't just farming power now. He was studying. The entity's attacks were pure system code given form, and through his failures, he was reverse engineering them. "You are adapting," the entity said, its voice gaining a faint edge. "This is not permissible." It shifted tactics, no longer attacking directly. Instead, it began rewriting the local reality. The ground beneath Leo's feet turned to quicksand program to drain stats. Terrain hazard negation failed. Conversion, earthwalk skill unlocked. Can move through solid matter. The air thickened with anti-magic fields. Mana regeneration failed. Conversion, mana void passive acquired. Absorbs ambient magic to fuel skills. Leo laughed, a raw, exhilarated sound. "Keep trying. I haven't felt this alive since I failed to walk 100 meters. He was a whirlwind of controlled catastrophe. Every step was a stumble he didn't correct, every blocked attack a deliberate misjudgment. The entity's frustration, if such a thing could feel, became palpable. Its crystalline form began to crack, tiny fissures spreading as it overexerted the system's resources to contain him. In the distance, Leo saw Kayla, the system auditor, watching from a half-collapsed tower. Her hood was down, revealing pale features etched with shock. She held a damaged scanner, its screen showing chaotic data streams. He caught her eye for a moment, and she mouthed a single word: "How?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned back to the entity, a plan forming. His trait wasn't just about converting failures, it was about subverting intent. And the entity's intent was to enforce order, to eliminate irregularities. But what if he could turn that order against itself? "Hey, tin can!" Leo shouted, skidding to a halt. "You want to terminate me? Fine. But you're doing it wrong. He dropped all his defenses, standing completely open. The entity hesitated, its facets cycling through threat assessments. Explain. You're using top-down enforcement, Leo said, his mind racing. But I'm a bottom-up problem. My trait works on feedback loops, every failure makes me stronger, which makes your next attack harder, which requires more system resources, which causes more glitches. You're not deleting me, you're just feeding me. He was bluffing, but the entity took the bait. It recalibrated, initiating a system diagnostic override, a deep scan meant to isolate and quarantine his trait at the source. A beam of concentrated data lanced into Leo's chest, bypassing his physical form to probe his soul. Soul integrity check failed. The notification burned gold in his vision. This was it, the ultimate failure. The entity was trying to access his core programming, to rewrite his very being. And Leo let it. He focused every ounce of his will on his trait, not to resist, but to amplify. To reflect. Conversion, system backdoor unlocked. Temporary administrative access granted. For a split second, Leo saw the world as the system did, not as ruins and monsters, but as lines of code, quest logs, stat sheets, and protocols. He saw the entity not as a monster, but as a subroutine, enforcer_protocol_omega, with vulnerabilities in its conflict resolution algorithms. He saw his own data, a tangled mess of errors and overrides, pulsing with golden light where his trait had woven itself into the fabric of reality. And he saw how to break it all. Thank you, he whispered, and struck. It wasn't a physical blow. He channeled his newly gained, order mirror, skill, reflecting the entity's own diagnostic beam back at it, but twisted through his trait. Instead of scanning, it injected a command, a simple, elegant line of code born from countless failures: initiate system reboot. The entity shuddered. Cracks spiderwebbed across its form, blue light bleeding out into the air. Impossible, you cannot access core functions. Watch me, Leo said, and pushed harder. He wasn't trying to kill the entity. Killing it would just trigger another enforcer, a bigger one. No, he was hacking it. Using its own connection to the system to send a cascade failure upward, through every layer of protocol, until it reached the source. The entity began to dissolve, not into nothingness, but into streams of data that spiraled into the sky. Around them, the glitches intensified. Blue screens popped into existence everywhere, showing the same message: critical error. Reboot imminent. Survivors cried out as their skills flickered, then stabilized with new, unlocked potentials. A man found he could now double jump. Without a skill book, a woman realized her fire magic no longer consumed mana. The system was unraveling, and Leo was the thread pulling it apart. With a final, silent pulse, the entity of order vanished. But in its place, a massive, swirling vortex of light opened in the sky, a direct conduit to the system's core. Leo could feel it pulling at him, trying to drag him in for correction. He planted his feet, his body trembling from the strain. This was the cliff's edge. One more push, and everything would change. For all the walk quests I failed, he muttered, and unleashed everything he had, every stat boost, every converted penalty, every stolen skill, into a single, focused beam of golden energy. It shot into the vortex, not as an attack, but as a payload. A virus of failure, designed to reboot not just the local system, but everything. The world went white. Then black. Silence. Leo felt himself falling, but there was no ground, no sky, no system notifications. Just an endless, weightless dark. The last thing he saw before consciousness fled was a flicker of text, faint and fading: reboot sequence initiated. All functions suspended. And then, nothing. Darkness receded like a slow tide pulling back from the shore of consciousness. Leo's first sensation was the gritty texture of broken concrete against his cheek. He groaned, pushing himself up on trembling arms. The world swam into focus, a ruined cityscape under a sky that was no longer the sterile blue of the system interface, but a pale, natural gray streaked with actual clouds. He was lying in the crater where the entity of order had dissolved. Around him, the air hummed with a strange new energy, less rigid, more organic. The omnipresent blue screens that had defined the apocalypse were gone. Instead, a faint, golden glow lingered at the edges of his vision, like afterimages of lightning. Status, Leo croaked, his voice rough from disuse. A screen flickered before him, but it was different. Gone was the stark, minimalist design. This one had subtle textures, like aged parchment, with flowing script instead of blocky text. Name, Leo. Rank, unknown. Level, 327. Trait, Perpetual Underdog's Boon, integrated. Note, trait stability at 78%. Hidden multipliers reduced by systemic recalibration, ***. Leo's breath hitched. Level 327, still monstrously high, but a far cry from the 999 he'd briefly flashed during the fight. The system had rebooted, and with it, some of his accumulated power had been normalized. The trait was no longer a hidden bug, but a recognized feature. The thought sent a chill down his spine. If the system knew about it, what else had changed? He climbed to his feet, dusting off the tattered remains of his clothes, the same cheap office where he'd been wearing when the apocalypse hit, now stained with dirt and ethereal energy burns. His body felt different. Lighter, but also, less. The overwhelming surge of power that had let him face the entity was muted, banked like a fire reduced to coals. He flexed a hand, and the air rippled faintly. Still strong enough to punch through a wall, but no longer to shatter a mountain. A sound made him turn, the crunch of footsteps on rubble. A group of survivors emerged from behind a collapsed storefront, led by Mara, the A-rank warrior he'd dueled earlier. Her armor was scuffed, and she carried her sword loosely, but her eyes were sharp. "You're alive," she said, her tone neutral. Leo nodded, falling back into the familiar slouch of the F-rank reject. "Barely." What happened?" "The system went dark," Mara replied, gesturing at the sky. "For about 12 hours. No quests, no screens, no monsters. Then it came back online, but it's different. Look." She summoned her own status screen. It shimmered with the same parchment-like quality, and her rank was listed as A rank, but below it was a new line, System Stability, 91%. "Stability?" Leo asked, playing dumb. "We don't know," said a younger survivor, a woman with a bow slung over her shoulder. "But the restrictions are looser. I can use skills without the old cooldown penalties. And the monsters, they're acting strangely. Less aggressive, more confused." Leo's mind raced. His reboot command had worked, too well. He'd forced the system to recalibrate, integrating his trait to maintain balance. But at what cost? He checked his trait description again, focusing on the fine print. Perpetual Underdog's Boon, integrated converts failures, penalties, and negative effects into scaled rewards. Efficiency reduced by 22% post-recalibration. Note, trade is now system-sanctioned, excessive exploitation may trigger oversight protocols, ***. Oversight protocols. So the system was still watching. He was no longer an anomaly to be purged, but a regulated variable. The thought was unsettling, but also, freeing. He could fail openly now, without fear of enforcers. But the reduced efficiency meant he'd need to fail bigger, more spectacularly, to gain the same boosts. "What about you, Leo?" Mara's voice cut through his thoughts. "The system labels you unknown. Not F rank. What does that mean?" He met her gaze, keeping his expression blank. "I don't know. Maybe the reboot glitched my profile. I'm still the same useless reject." He forced a weak smile, the one he'd perfected over weeks of humiliation. Mara studied him, her eyes narrowing. "During the blackout, people reported seeing golden light around you. And when the system came back, your name flashed in the global logs. Some are calling you the reboot savior. Others think you're a curse, that you caused the purge and the instability." Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. So his actions hadn't gone unnoticed. He needed to disappear, to blend in before curiosity turned to hostility. "I just got lucky," he mumbled, looking at his feet. "I was in the wrong place at the wrong time." "Maybe," Mara said, not sounding convinced. "But until we understand what's happening, you should stay with us. For your own safety." It was an offer, but it felt like a command. Leo nodded, feigning gratitude. "Thank you. I don't have anywhere else to go." As the group led him back to their settlement, a fortified community in what had once been a shopping mall, Leo observed the changed world. The ruins were the same, but the atmosphere was different. Survivors moved with less tension, chatting openly instead of whispering. Children played among the debris, their laughter a sound Leo hadn't heard in weeks. Blue screens still floated in the air, but they were translucent, less intrusive. And everywhere, the golden afterglow lingered, like dust motes in sunlight. At the settlement, he was given a corner in a communal sleeping area, a thin mattress on the floor, separated from others by hanging sheets. It was a step up from the literal gutters he'd sometimes slept in as an F rank, but it still marked him as an outsider. He sat on the mattress, pulling up his status screen again. Skills asterisk. Reality immunity, passive 45% resistance to systemic alterations. Reduced from 95% post-recalibration. Spatial folding, active short-range teleportation. Cooldown, 30 seconds. Slime mimicry, active shapeshift into a slime form. Duration, 1 hour. Cooldown, 2 hours. Slime mimicry. That was his ticket to anonymity. He waited until nightfall, when the settlement was quiet except for the soft snores of sleepers. Then he activated the skill. His body dissolved into a gelatinous, translucent blue form, a level 1 slime, utterly harmless. In this shape, he oozed silently out of the sleeping area, through a crack in the wall, and into the moonlit ruins beyond. The slime form felt natural now, a second skin. It masked his energy signature completely. To the system, he was just another low-level monster. He moved through the streets, a silent blob navigating piles of rubble. His senses in this form were different. He could feel vibrations in the ground, taste the air for traces of energy. And he could see the golden threads of the new system weaving through reality, connecting everything in a delicate web. He needed to test his trait. Find a failure, see how the scaled rewards work now. Up ahead, a quest notification flickered in the air, visible even in his slime form. Quest, defeat the graveyard shamblers, level 5 to 10. Reward, 500 EXP, common gear. Accept. Y/N ***. Perfect. He shifted back to human form behind a collapsed bus, his clothes reappearing seamlessly. Then he approached the quest marker, a small cemetery overgrown with thorny vines. 3 shamblers, zombie-like creatures with glowing eyes, lurked among the tombstones. Leo didn't draw a weapon. He walked straight toward them, hands at his sides. The shamblers groaned, lurching forward. He let the first one claw at his arm, pulling up his status to watch. Health, -10, minor injury. Perpetual Underdog's Boon activated, failure to defend converted. Reward, plus 50 EXP, plus 1 vitality. 50 EXP for a minor injury. Before the reboot, that would have been at least 500. The efficiency reduction was real. He needed a bigger failure. He stood still as the shamblers surrounded him, their attacks landing in a flurry of scratches and bites. His health dropped steadily, but he made no move to fight back. The system logged each hit as a failure to evade. Failure to evade attack. Reward, plus 30 EXP, plus 0.5 agility. Failure to evade attack. Reward, plus 25 EXP, plus 0.3 strength. It was adding up, but slowly. Then he had an idea. He waited until his health was down to 20%, then triggered a skill, spatial folding, aiming to teleport away. But he intentionally misjudged the distance, teleporting only a foot to the left, still within the shambler's reach. Skill usage failed, spatial folding inaccuracy. Reward, plus 200 EXP, skill proficiency plus 5%. Better. The shamblers, confused by his sudden shift, redoubled their attacks. Leo let them drive him to the ground, pretending to be overwhelmed. His health hit 5%. Critical failure, near-death experience. Reward, plus 1000 EXP, new skill unlocked, regenerative slime, passive, slow health regeneration in slime form, ... He smiled through the pain. That was more like it. The new skill was a nice bonus, perfect for his covert lifestyle. With a thought, he shifted back into slime form. The shamblers, unable to comprehend their target turning into a blob, hesitated. Leo oozed away, his health already beginning to tick up slowly thanks to regenerative slime. Once at a safe distance, he shifted back and checked his status. Level 328. The gains were smaller, but they were steady. And now he had a passive healing skill. The trait was still a cheat code, just a nerfed one. As dawn approached, he returned to the settlement, slipping back into his slime form to ooze through the crack and resume human shape on his mattress. No one had noticed his absence. Over the next few days, he played his part, the harmless unknown rank, helping with menial tasks, always failing at them in small, unnoticeable ways. Each failure brought trickles of EXP and stat boosts. He watched the survivors, listening to their conversations. The world was adapting. New quests appeared, less punitive, more exploratory. Monsters were weaker but more varied. And the golden glow was slowly fading, the system stabilizing. But Leo could feel it, the system was aware of him. Sometimes, when he failed a task, a faint, invisible scan would pass over him, like a librarian checking a book back into place. He knew he couldn't stay here forever. Mara's suspicion was growing, and other survivors were starting to look at him oddly, some with reverence, others with fear. He needed to move on, to explore this new world and find ways to fail on a grander scale. On the 5th day after the reboot, he packed a small bag, a water bottle, some dried rations, a map scavenged from the ruins. He told Mara he was going to scout the northern districts for resources. She nodded, her expression unreadable. Be careful, Leo. The system may be calmer, but the world is still dangerous. I will, he said, giving her his best reject smile. He left the settlement at noon, walking until he was out of sight. Then he shifted into slime form, oozing into the sewers, a perfect network of tunnels to travel unseen. For hours, he moved through the darkness, his slime senses mapping the way. He emerged in a part of the city he'd never seen before, a district of towering skyscrapers half swallowed by vines. Here, the golden glow was stronger, pulsing from a central point, a shattered office building that reminded him of his old workplace. Curiosity drew him closer. Inside, the air hummed with system energy. And in the center of the main lobby, floating in midair, was a massive, crystalline core, crackling with golden light. The system's heart. Or a fragment left behind from the reboot. Leo shifted back to human form, approaching cautiously. The core pulsed, and a screen appeared before him, not his status, but a global broadcast. System update, stability at 94%. Integration complete. Then, new text scrolled across, words that turned Leo's blood to ice. The Perpetual Underdog's Boon is now a global trait. Seekers of failure, arise. The message hung in the air, glowing fiercely. Leo stared, his mind reeling. Global trait. That meant, others could have it. Or versions of it. The system hadn't just integrated his trait, it had disseminated it. Was this a reward? A trap? A way to balance the playing field? He looked at his hands, then at the core. The world had rebooted, but the game was far from over. And now, he wasn't the only one with the power to turn failure into victory.